Good morning, and this is Michelle Clark. So it's our STEM school. It's select enrollment on the west side, and I think they have like 100% of the students going to college that's been accepted. It's excellent. So we did a tour of the school, and we saw that one of the students actually received about $700,000 worth of scholarship money. $700,000. She's a senior, and she's was able to get about $700,000 worth of scholarship dollars to go to probably any school that she want to go to. She's been accepted to a lot of schools, and so I'm happy to be here with all of you. And I want to also thank Attorney Melissa Williams. She did a lot of work. I don't know if you guys know, but it really wasn't me doing all those emailing. It was her. So let's give her a round of applause. Melissa is truly all about restoring justice. And I do know that everyone here is all about restoring justice. And one of the people that I know understands restorative justice is a young man out here, and I'm gonna let him do a welcome, and I'm gonna sit down, and he's the president of a school called, he's gonna tell you. So come on down. I didn't even say his name, but, so can you handle that for me? Well, come on. Tell them all about your school, and tell them what restorative justice is, and tell them what you expect from all the adults and what you're gonna do as a minor, and tell them everything. It's all yours.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everyone. My name is Caleb Ottman. I am the president of Village Leadership Academy Student Council. I am also an organizer in the city of Chicago. And I am from Village Leadership Academy, which is a social justice-based school that serves mostly young people of color from the west side of Chicago who may not have the money to attend the best private school or the best schools here in the city of Chicago, but we do provide scholarships. And when we talk about social justice is built into every part of our curriculum, from our math to our science to our actual social justice curriculum, which some people may call it social studies, but we at Village Leadership Academy, we change it to social justice. And when we talk about social justice, we talk about equality, we talk about everybody being treated fair, we talk about creative alternatives than and putting people in jail. We talk about different aspects, and everyone bring a subject to the table, and we talk about it and see what may work, and we see what may not work, and how do we create a better place and create global leaders within our school. So when we talk about restorative justice, we're not only talking about just justice, we're talking about just what was the harm done. What was the harm done, and how do we fix it, instead of what was the harm done and let's punish them. Let's find out ways that we don't need to punish that person, but make sure it never happens again. So that's some of the things that we talk about at Village Leadership Academy, and yeah.
Awesome.
My principal is Nakisha Hobbs. If she wants to come up, maybe? She's right there, if you can wave. And yeah. She has worked from when I was a baby till now, until forever, but she is actually the principal and co-founder of Village Leadership Academy, and it started as a preschool or a daycare center that then turned into a much bigger school and much bigger umbrella. Parents started coming back for more, and she gave it to them, and she said that we won't let you down, and we want to thank her for that, because I wouldn't have some of the chances that I have today to be here, to be able to organize around the city without her. And she also works with a lot of legislators to get funding for daycare centers and child care and all of the things around the world. So she's her own activist herself. I'm in 8th grade. I'll be the first graduated class of Village Leadership Academy. Yeah.
So now this is what it's all about, right? Now, if we do this is education clearly is the best form of justice, social justice. Then we don't have to worry about having events where we have to worry about getting people's records sealed and repairing their lives. If we do it right at the beginning, everything works out. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome introduction. You should be very proud, Principal Hobbs. Awesome introduction. I'm Attorney Melissa Williams, working in a number of capacities. One of the capacities that Representative Ford did not mention is that I'm the Criminal Justice Chairperson for the 8th District, which is his district's advisory council that he just started up this year. So this is our first event, and we're so thankful that you all are here with us. There are so many different types of people that are here, and we're hoping that some of the ideas and the recommendations that you all come up with on today are things that can be implemented on not only the state level, but also on the federal, on the county, and on the local city level as well. So I'm not going to talk very much more because there are some experts that are here with us, and this is a hearing. It is not a formal hearing. It is an informal hearing. I remind the John Marshall Law students that are here of our challenge to make sure that we're taking notes on today. Because after this event is over, we're not just going to go back to where we came from and twiddle our thumbs and not think about restoring justice anymore. The John Marshall Law students are going to prepare a report that is going to go to Governor Rauner, as well as to members of the Illinois Criminal Justice Reform Commission, the County Criminal Justice Reform Commission, and the officials that you see here today, as well as others that were not able to be with us. State Representative Ford wants to make sure that we get all of our panelists introduced before Wendy begins to speak, so we'll pass the mic so that they can introduce themselves.
Good morning. I'm Stephen Sawyer, retired circuit judge, retired chief judge of the 2nd Judicial Circuit. I'm one of the 28 members of the Governor's Commission on Criminal Justice and Sentencing Reform. I bring a community corrections perspective to that commission. I'm here to listen to your concerns and your ideas.
I'm State Rep. LaShawn Ford, and I cover Chicago's West Side, Oak Park, Berwyn and LaGrange Park, and parts of Brookfield. And I'm the chair of the Restorative Justice Committee in Springfield.
Good morning, Lynetta Haynes-Turner. I'm the Executive Director of the Justice Advisory Council. I'm here representing the Cook County Board President, Toni Preckwinkle. She couldn't be here today, but as you all know, she's very committed to reforming the juvenile and criminal justice system, and this is one opportunity that we really wanted to hear from what you all have to say to take it back to the President.
Good morning. I'm Dorothy Brown, the Clerk of the Circuit Court for Cook County, and we have direct responsibility for accepting the petitions for expungement, getting that information to the various justice agencies for review to determine whether or not they want to object, making sure that the judge has the information for hearing, and then notifying the petitioner whether or not their expungement or sealing petition has been approved or denied.
Good morning, I'm Richard Boykin. I represent District 1 on the Cook County Board. There's 17 Cook County Commissioners. I'm one of them. I represent 60% of the west side of Chicago and the communities in the western suburbs, Oak Park, Forest Park, Bellwood, Broadview, Maywood, part of Westchester, and part of Hillside. Thank you all so much.
Good morning. To those that are sitting on the panel, I'd like to thank you for being here. Hello, Commissioner. To those that are sitting on the other side of the panel, I'd like to thank you for giving your time. And to those that are sitting in the audience, I'd like to thank you for coming. And to those that stand and sit and have stood in my spot, that have walked my walk, I'd like to encourage you to understand that you don't live in a rearview mirror, that your path is straight ahead of you. I say this simply to you because there is no direction that you can't walk forward, and that no one can tell you what a person with a felony background looks like, because you're looking at someone who has a felony background. Yes, Wendy Pearson has a felony and an X on her back, but it has not stopped me from doing and being the person that God intended me to be. You're looking at someone who committed a crime some 15 years ago, but it hasn't stopped me. No matter what somebody said I couldn't do, I've achieved. I've moved forward, and there's no rearview mirror for me. I am a presidential award winner. I'm a national award winner. And those things I achieved, no matter what somebody told me I could or could not do. I am here to tell you that you have the ability to fight and to achieve whatever it is that you believe in your mind and in your heart that you can do. I'm here to tell you that there are people that are willing to help you to do that if you're willing to do it for yourself. That there are no handouts, but there are hands up. I'm here to tell you that there are people that are sitting at a table that are willing to help you to achieve. There are people that have been in your shoes, that have walked that path, but are looking in rearview mirrors. I have been down a road of destruction, and that our communities are filled with destructive things. But you are the reasons that we're sitting here and standing here today. And that your world can be different if you fight and you believe. We've been fighting for a very long time, and there are people that don't believe. But we're living and we're breathing. And most of us are living off the prayers of somebody else. Believe me, I'm not living and standing and breathing on my own prayers, because there was a time when I didn't pray and I didn't believe. I didn't believe that I could achieve and I could move out of the destructive path that had to do with drugs. Yes, you're looking at someone that was addicted. But now I'm looking at a new world. I'm looking at a new reason. Yes, there was a time in my life when I worked for some of the major corporations, Fortune 500 corporations in the city of Chicago and the suburbs. I have a strong background, a strong working background. I have a praying mother who prayed for me. I had a strong grandmother that prayed for me. And most of the people that are sitting at this desk, I've worked with. Yes, I've done testimonials. I've walked the streets. I've buried and helped bury other people's children. I've sat on committees. But I alone cannot do it by myself. And each and every last one of us needs somebody else. Each and every last one of us have to work together to change what is happening in our communities, in our cities, and in our nation. And if you believe that you can make a difference, then believe me, we, all of us, together, can change what is happening in our communities. The blinders are off. The world is changing. But each and every last one of us can be a part of that change. Work together, go around these tables, ask for some help, but most importantly, be willing to help yourself. I thank you for your time and your attention. Pray, but prayer is sometimes not enough. For without action, prayer changes nothing. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Pearson. Before we call up our next witness to provide some testimony, there's an insert in your program and it says bills, 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 proposals and legislation and things that we've gathered over the last few months that are important pieces that should be supported. And hopefully we're thinking that this can lead to some true criminal justice reform. So we're going to be talking about some of these as we go on in the program. The first one that you see up there is House Bill 218. So in the Illinois General Assembly, where State Representative Ford is from, this particular piece of legislation talks about decriminalizing the possession of small amounts of marijuana. Make this a ticketable rather than a jailable offense. Right now, marijuana is not legally possessed in the state of Illinois. There are some pieces of legislation that have been passed with regard to medical marijuana for people to have a special license to use marijuana to ease the pain that they have due to a medical condition. But in general, it is still illegal at this point. So one of the members of the Illinois House Restorative Justice Committee, I believe it's Representative Cassidy, I believe that this is her bill, and she is suggesting that marijuana become decriminalized when it's possessed in small amounts and that it become a ticketable rather than a jailable offense. So that's one of the pieces of legislation that we're asking people to support. If you are a supporter, what you can do during the 11 o'clock hour, you can provide testimony to kind of talk about why you support that legislation. And then you could also, even if you don't want to speak, you could fill out a witness slip and just put on there that you're a supporter of House Bill 218. So I'm going to be quiet once again, and I'm going to bring up George P. Mitchell of the Illinois NAACP, that is the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, not the NCAA. We want to make sure that people don't make that mistake the way they sometimes do. Mr. Mitchell. He does have some ideas and some recommendations for us as far as legislation is concerned.
Thank you. Good morning, all. I made a couple of notes here on things I'd like to just mention and go over with you about the role of the NAACP, as well as the kinds of things that we should be doing as community members to bring people back who've been in trouble with the law, bring them back and put them back into positions where they can be valued contributors in our own communities. The NAACP has identified 5 game changers for the 21st century, and they're very important ideas, and I think we all know what they are. We just haven't necessarily said it all at the same time. But these are all interconnected, and they are important things for all working people and all people who are not even working. But the first is education. The second is health. The third is voting and voting representation. The fourth is economic sustainability. And the fifth involves the criminal justice system and restoring people to their rightful places in society. All 5 of these are connected. I have the feeling, though, that over the past few years, I've developed in my own head the idea that the reason why we have so much trouble with restoring people who have had criminal backgrounds is because of fear. We sometimes are afraid of each other and are afraid to acknowledge the fact that people who have stumbled along the way did not fall. And we have to find a way of helping people who have stumbled, and even those who have fallen, to help them stand up again and move forward. Fear, I think, is an important part of understanding why we have the new industry in the United States, which is called prison. That's a growing industry, and it should not be that way. I've heard comments about that we have more people in prison in the United States than there are people in other countries of the world. And we need to change that. One way of doing that is, as Melissa mentioned just a few moments ago, about decriminalizing some of the behaviors that we consider to be antisocial, and stop with all this mandatory minimum sentencing. It doesn't make sense to do that to people. We have to make those kinds of changes and eliminate the idea that we are afraid of people who have been in prison, because there's nothing really to fear. I know we all talk about we all talk about not wanting to be around people who have criminal backgrounds, but there are so many people who have criminal backgrounds. How can we pick and choose now? We have to find some way of reorienting our own thinking about that. Restoring justice itself is extremely important, if for no other reason than people who have been in the system as criminals need to have an opportunity to express themselves through voting and voting rights and selecting who they want to represent them, because it all ties together into the 5 game changers I mentioned before: criminal justice, economic sustainability, voting and representation, health, and education. And with that, I'm going to stop and let someone else speak.
Do we have any questions from the members of the panel that are taking the testimony and listening to what's being said? Okay, thank you, Mr. Mitchell. He said a mouthful there. Let's talk a little bit about House Bill 430. This looks to be one of State Representative Ford's bills in the Illinois General Assembly. This talks about reducing nonviolent offender sentences from felonies to misdemeanors. So we're not gonna stand up here and try to explain the bill in every piece of detail. There is a way to look it up on the Illinois General Assembly website to get more details about it. I don't know if State Representative Ford had anything else that he wanted to say about it, but what our concern, I think we agree from what Mr. Mitchell said, you know, even from the standpoint of the community and the NAACP, is that there are too many nonviolent sentences and offenders that are out here, and they're having felonies placed on them, which is that X is a heavy burden to carry. It's a struggle to watch people carry that X on their back, let alone some of the people who have that X on their backs. So what we're saying is, we need to see, when it's nonviolent offenses, we need to change the criminal code maybe. You know, instead of having these things out here where everything is a felony, some of the things that are low-level felonies should be able to be changed to be maybe high-level misdemeanors. Am I saying that correctly, Representative Ford? Okay, I see the judge is nodding his head here, and he's, you know, one of our resident experts sitting on the Criminal Justice Reform Commission. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to say about that in particular.
Well, I'm one of 28 members, and I'm not on assignment from the commission. So I'm in the position in which I really need to mainly listen today, but I'm very interested in everything that you're saying.
Okay, well, look, that's what we like. That's what we like to hear. We like to hear the fact that there are going to be people that can take the ideas and recommendations back to the governor, back to the county board president. Hopefully we'll get some of our city of Chicago, some of the current officials in here, take some things, our newly elected mayor, you know, take some things back that can be done on the city level. And then on the federal level, they are on fire with bipartisan, meaning both parties are coming together to the table to talk criminal justice reform. So they're on fire with this. Senator Durbin could not be here with us today. He's out of town. But this is one of his main issues, so he will definitely be someone that's interested in what we're in here doing today. So without further ado, once again, I'm going to close my mouth, and we're going to call up Mr. William Colquitt.
Good morning. Distinguished panel, glad you're here to listen to us today. And I'm going to new school, I don't have a thing prepared here. But I want to say today, I wrote a little something I didn't want to jabber here, so I wrote a piece. I grew up in the Ida B. Wells housing project. I watched my peers enter the life of crime. Some lost their lives. I stayed in school and managed to survive and stay out of trouble. In the 1990s, that was a very difficult thing to do. I waited until I was 30 to make a nonviolent bad decision. After the court process concluded, a life sentence, in my opinion, is not the proper punishment. Electronic background checks has made it all too convenient for employers to discriminate, often illegally, against people with criminal records. Crime is crime, but real change and determination to righteous citizenship exists in me and my fellow citizens. This is the first time I ever had a chance to tell my story because I didn't have the ears and I was ashamed of it. I'm over the guilt and the shame now. I just want to press for change and recover from my mistakes. I'm a gospel radio host by choice and passion, shameless plug, WIIT 88.9 FM, Chicago, every Sunday, 6 to 8 p.m. So I must say that. It's my faith and my belief that God has been working for him now to spread the gospel, but I really want people to know that, of course, even to the panel here, I want to imagine and believe that the X that's on the backs, it's invisible ink. It's going to disappear soon. And I just want to share that faith with you and for the rest of the panel. And I want to say thank you to Attorney Williams and Representative Ford for giving me a voice here today. Thank you.
So what we'll do now, we need to move and have Attorney Brendan Schiller is going to come up and give us some recommendations as well. He actually practices dealing with civil rights law and criminal defense. So we think he has some really interesting things that he wants to share with us, and we'll come back and we'll do the next two bills after Attorney Schiller is done. Went to law school with him, guys. You don't want to know the stories that I know about Schiller.
Thank you, Melissa. I actually have some very specific proposals for the panel, but before I get there, I want to say a little bit about me, and then I want to say a little bit about what I don't think we need to worry about. I built a 10-attorney law firm. We're a private firm, but we figured out a way to make money while serving the people. So about 30% of our practice is criminal defense. About 30% of our practice is what's called civil rights, but mostly means suing the police. About 30% of our practice is immigration, and about 10% of our practice represents small businesses. We just bought a 13,000 square foot building on the west side that we've been rehabbing, and we're opening in the summer there by California and Harrison.
Who's your mother?
And my mother's former Alderman Helen Schiller. I also represent some medical marijuana interests. So that's kind of where I come by this. We have on average about 150 criminal cases we defend every year. We have an average about 50 civil rights cases we pursue every year. And this is throughout the county, throughout the Northern District of Illinois. So that's the basis by which I'm going to come to these specific proposals in a minute. Before I get to the specific proposals, I want to talk about a couple things, because I think it's always necessary at these events, about what we need to know about today's current youth, because there's some misnomers that come out of this. As we sit here today, today's generation of teenagers, today's generation of youth are the least self-destructive, the least destructive, and the most educated youth since we've been keeping good records. And really, we've only been keeping good records on all of this for about 60 years in this country. They're less likely to commit any acts of violence than any generation for the last 60 years. They're less likely to be self-destructive and commit suicide than any generation for the last 60 years. They're less likely to engage in abusive drug use, and there's a slight distinction, but abusive drug use than any generation for the last 60 years. And it's a myth. It's an unfortunate, nostalgic-induced myth that this generation is somehow worse than our generation or their generation or our mother's generation or our grandparents' generation. The fact of the matter is they're better. These are far better people, these young people. And we need to keep that in mind when we talk about what needs to be done. Okay. So I have some specific proposals. One very specific proposal for the state. There's a state statute, 725 ILCS 5/103-3. That's the state law that says you have a right to a phone call, a reasonable number of phone calls in a reasonable amount of time when you're arrested. Anybody who's familiar with the history of injustice when it comes to the criminal justice system in the city of Chicago knows that the reason Burge was able to get false confessions, the reason Guevara was able to get false identifications is because people were held in custody for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days without any phone calls. It doesn't matter what the state statute says. Who determines reasonableness? The police department. And what's the remedy if it's violated? There is none. There's a simple way to rectify that. Reasonableness needs to be defined. Anything more than 2 hours is unreasonable. Anything more than 2 hours is unreasonable. If your family doesn't know where you're at, if your attorney doesn't know where you're at, if you've been disappeared within the police department, this isn't Chile circa 1973, that's unreasonable. But that can be defined in the state statute with a simple amendment. Anything more than 2 hours is unreasonable. And there can be a remedy if that gets violated. A simple remedy. A remedy that says, if this is violated, you have an administrative right, you get attorney's fees, and it can be very similar to the federal statute that relates to false credit reporting. You get a $500 damage award if you are held for more than 2 hours without getting a phone call. And we know that in the city of Chicago, one of my other roles is I'm on the advisory board of the First Defense. We know that in the city of Chicago in 2013, less than 0.3% of all arrestees had an attorney visit because obviously they necessarily didn't have access to attorneys, but there's free attorneys all over the place. It's called First Defense for arrestees. They didn't get their phone calls. And when you don't get your phone calls, unfortunately, bad things happen at the police station. So that's something that's I think, very simple state fix. I got a more complicated county fix, Commissioner Boykin. So we know that police accountability is one issue. We also know that youth jobs are another issue, despite the fact that this is I would consider, best generation of teenagers, of youth. We also know there is a very direct correlation between access to jobs or lack of access to jobs and crime committed by youth. And it's very hard because, we've been in a 35, 40-year austerity, both on federal and state in terms of money for youth. But I think there's a way to incentivize the private sector. I think, Commissioner Gaynor put together a very interesting plan for a land bank a few years ago. I think the county can pass a law that says banks that are lien holders on property that's been vacant for more than 30 days have an obligation to board up that property, but that they will get a credit from the county for boarding it up if they use youth from the state district or the county commission district to actually do the board up. Now, you got a 14th Amendment issue, you can't do it around race, but you can do it around districts. You can even do it around wards. And you can incentivize those banks to hire young people in the private sector to do the board up of those vacant buildings on the south and west side that remain vacant, and that we always put the onus on the owner instead of the lien holder, which is the banks who have the money to make it happen. So I think in terms of the county, that would be my suggestion, my very specific suggestion for the county. And I don't want to take up any more time. I got other suggestions. I'll email you, but I got one other suggestion. I got one other thing I want to talk about, and this is back to the state. So I think, let me just say this. I think police accountability, jobs, mental health, which I haven't had the time to talk about, but I know everybody agrees that's a big issue. I think the next issue is guns. The problem is with guns, every time we talk about guns, the resulting legislation is, again, more onerous legislation that somehow criminalizes our youth and results in higher penalties and more Black and Latino youth going to prison for a longer time as they're targeted. We need a creative piece of gun legislation. We know that the federal government tracks every serial number on every gun. We know that the city local agencies, when they seize guns, are supposed to call into leads and give that serial number. What nobody is doing is doing an analysis and seeing if a large proportion or a disproportionate amount of those guns are coming from particular retailers. And I would suggest to you that they're straw buyers, but if you have a straw buyer going to the same retailers regularly, and those retailers recognize that this same straw buyer is buying 1,000 guns, 2,000 guns, 3,000 guns, that you can criminalize that conduct. And that if you really want to have gun laws, you take away the focus from the gun possession. You take away the focus from the young Black or Latino man who has the gun, and you put it on the people who are putting the guns into the market, into the stream. You put it on the gun retailers who are hiding their head while straw buyers come to them. And I think there's a way to criminalize that. I know there's a lot of other speakers here today, and I got a direct line, it's Melissa, so I'm gonna send her my other recommendations to her. But I wanna thank you very much for the opportunity to bring these recommendations to you today, and thank you very much.
Do we have any questions from the panel? We do, okay.
Mr. Schiller, I can tell you for a fact your statement about the tracking in guns for specific retailers and straw purchases. Chicago Police Department does that. There are certain ways we can go after them, but we have to stay within the law. But we do track where the guns are coming from.
I'm just going to say on the record that that's a bad bill, because what happens with 3-year mandatory minimums, if you're caught with a gun, an illegal gun, what the mayor is saying is that we want to make sure that you get 3 years minimum in jail, period. That's a horrible bill, and I think that when we hear the mayor and the police superintendent talk about this is how we're going to cure crime in the city of Chicago, that's not going to cure crime. This mandatory 3-year minimum is actually going against all of the work that the people in this room have been fighting for, saying we're going to put people in jail. Let's say Attorney Schiller is a person that is in a car with someone that has a right to carry the gun, but he's not. It's not his gun. The police pull him over, and Attorney Schiller is the one in the car. He could get 3 years, mandatory. And there's nothing anybody could do about it because it would be the law. So just watch out for that one, and I would advise everyone to stand against that. And when you hear the commissioner and the mayor talking about that's the only way we can fix crime in this city, it's false. And he's here.
All right. Good. Let me apologize for being tardy. I had 2 other things to do this morning, and some people held me up later than I thought. I just want to thank all of you folks, and of course, this wonderful state representative. He does such a great job, and we were so happy to have him on the show yesterday with his assistant here. And I don't know whether you saw me coming down the stairs or not, but I was being very careful. I slipped on some steps and hurt my knee. That's bad enough, but as you counselors, as lawyers would know, it's even worse. It happened in my house. So I can't sue anybody, you know. So somebody even suggested, LaShawn, well, what you do is you get a little water, you know, and go into some place, store it, and put a little on the floor and fall out. I say, with my luck, it will be on the video, you know. So anyway, I think this is a wonderful thing that is happening here. It's just great, and I want to commend everybody, obviously the organizers and of course the people who are here participating. This is one of the major things. Voting, of course, is so important, and it corrects so many of the problems that we have. And when we talk about police situations and violence and so forth, even in Ferguson, where they had a chance to really vote and do something about the problems that exist, they still didn't do it. Our voting here this past week was not as it should have been, obviously. The results, of course, it is questionable as to whom you ask. You know, we had a lot of division there, which is good, it's healthy, because you really get to talk about the issues. But the thing about the police situation is so important, and I think what the representative is doing with this whole restorative justice is probably the best thing that can happen relative to the community that we have and the problems that we have. You know, we were talking about, and I don't know whether anybody's discussed this or not, the movie that is being talked about, Chirac, which some people already criticize that. I don't know how that's going to do us any good at all. And I hope that there will be a change relative to that, because we're trying to go the other direction. And we sure don't need to continue with that kind of circumstance. I was very upset to see, of course, the first quarter of the year, the murder rate has gone up. And that's not good, because it was diminishing, and we were very happy about that. But as far as the restorative justice is concerned, this is something that I think, and I'm so pleased again, and I commend everybody who's been involved in this. I really think that's going to be something that everyone's going to be able to continue to work with. And this will just be a good thing. Yes, here with us now, Tom Morrison, Illinois State Representative from the 54th District. Thank you so much for being here. Give him a round of applause. Yeah, oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
Well, thanks for having me here, if only for a few minutes. It's a busy Saturday, and I wasn't too far away, so I texted Representative Ford and asked if I could stop by for a little bit, and I'm happy to just have a chance to say a few words. My district is up in the northwest part of Cook County, so I've got towns like Palatine, Rolling Meadows, a little bit of Hoffman Estates, a little bit of Schaumburg, Arlington Heights, areas like that. And I'm in my third term in the General Assembly, and there have been a number of issues where, even though I'm a Republican, I'm happy to work with Representative Ford on issues like school choice, like things like restorative justice. And this is what really got me interested. In my past life, before I got elected to office, I ran a cleaning and restoration business. And I'll never forget the day we had an opening for an office manager position, and one woman applied for the position, and she just told us right up front, she said, I made some mistakes when I was 19. I wrote some checks on someone else's name. I used someone else's credit card. I know I shouldn't have done that. I ended up having to pay for it. But I'm a good worker, and I'll do a good job for you if you just give me a chance. And my brother and I said, yeah, we're going to give you a chance. She turned out to be an awesome employee, just great to have on staff, super hardworking, worked great with everybody else, really did her job extremely well. About a year later, we owned a franchise. About a year later, we were told from the franchisor, you cannot have anybody on staff who has a felony. And we said, well, this is someone who we want to have on our staff. And they said, I'm sorry, if you do this, you're not going to be able to participate in these various programs. In other words, we would end up losing about 75 to 80% of our customer base if we kept her on staff. And what was really sad is she, you know, she understood, and we had to let her go. But I never forgot that, and I tried to make some calls on her behalf. I mean, I wasn't very politically active, but I knew a few people, and we were just told, you know, she could apply to the governor. The governor could, you know, give her a special exemption. But aside from that, you're out of luck, and she is too. And when I got elected to office, I remembered that, and I know that there are a lot of people who just want to work. There are so many redemptive qualities to just getting back into the workplace, and so anything that I could do to help that, you know, obviously we don't agree on 100% of solutions, but where we can agree, I'm happy to do that. So thanks again for putting this on, and thanks for giving me a chance to speak.
Thank you. Great to have him here. You know, this whole situation with punishing people, I remember when not then President, when Senator Obama was running for president the first time, I spent quite a few days in Iowa during their caucuses and so forth, and I was snatching everybody I could. I was in a fast food place in one town in Iowa, and this young African-American man was near me, and I said, "Have you voted yet?" And he says, "No." I said, "Well, why not?" He says, "Well, I can't vote." I said, "You can't vote? Why can't you vote?" He says, "Well, I'm a former felon. I have a record." I said, "Oh, no, you can vote. We've changed the law. You can vote." He said, "Oh, okay, fine." Then, Representative, a little day later, after we're getting around, I said, "I'm not in Illinois. I'm in Iowa. I don't know whether they can vote here or not." And true enough, I checked and he couldn't vote. So I think there's 16 or 17 states now, and there ought to be more. This is something that hopefully eventually Congress will do, where people who have served their time and you know, have had no problems would be able to vote. But that's only fair. So anyway, yeah. Okay.
So we're going to hear from the Honorable Dorothy Brown.
Thank you, and good morning to you. Good to see you, Cliff. Absolutely. Thanks for having me on your shows many times to talk about the issues. And of course, we'll be calling concerning the Expungement Summit very soon. Good morning to everyone. Each year, for those that came in later after we introduced ourselves, I'm Dorothy Brown. I'm the clerk of the circuit court, and we have specific responsibility for accepting the filing of petitions for expungement from individuals. Once we receive those petitions, we're also responsible for getting a copy of the expungement petition to all of the justice agencies involved in that particular arrest, the various community, the police departments. We also are responsible for getting a copy to the Illinois State Police, to the state's attorney, to the public defender, and of course, in front, we get the application for expungement in front of the judge. We send those petitions to the state police, the police departments, et cetera, to give them an opportunity to object or not object to the petition. And then once the judge rules on the petition, whether that judge sometimes has a hearing, sometimes they do not, but once they rule on the petition, then we're responsible for notifying all those same agencies the results of that ruling, whether that was approved or denied, and then we're also responsible for getting that information out to the individual to let them know whether or not they have been approved or denied for their expungement or sealing. Because of that involvement, and I felt that when I first took office, I felt that the clerk of the court was really the cog in the wheel of the expungement process. And I was able to go to Congressman Davis's, one of Congressman Davis's summits on expungement, and I saw the need for the expungement process and how people really need to understand and have a better clarification on how that entire process worked. So back in 2004, I decided to host a full-service expungement summit. We started that expungement summit, and this will be our, I believe, our 10th or 11th year that we would have held that expungement summit. We're going to be holding it the first Saturday in June at the Living Word Christian Center. So I'd like for everyone here to help me get the word out. It's going to be at the Living Word Christian Center, which is at 7600 Roosevelt Road in Forest Park, Illinois. And registration is at 8:30 a.m. and we are there until 6 p.m. If there are any attorneys in the room and you would like to be trained as to how to do expungements, because maybe you practice a different kind of law, we hold trainings during the month of May for attorneys to teach them how to do expungements. Cabrini Green Legal Services, as well as the Public Defender's Office, actually, they do the training for us, and you also receive free continuing legal education credits for coming to our expungement training. The clerk's office is a provider for continuing legal education. And so during the summit, we have over 100 attorneys there to actually complete the application for individuals, and then I actually bring my entire office. We call it a full service expungement summit because we give individuals an opportunity to actually have their expungement applications completed for them. Year before last, we started the process of actually having judges on site. We thank Chief Judge Evans because we actually set up courtrooms, mock courtrooms, and judges are able to rule on whether or not a person can be found indigent, and they can file their petitions for free. Because we found that many people were coming to the expungement summits, and we provided them the opportunity to actually pay on site, because I bring all my cash register and my cashiers out, and we didn't want them to leave for any reason to have to come back. We wanted them to have it filed that day. And we found that many just could not afford to pay, so we decided that we need to have judges there to rule as to whether or not they were indigent and could file for free. So we do that as well, and we also have the Illinois Prison Review Board there, because many of the individuals don't qualify for expungement or sealing through the court. So if they don't qualify for expungement or sealing through the courts, then we wanted to have the Illinois Prison Review Board there so that they could tell them how they could apply for expungement or executive clemency from the governor. We have the Illinois Appellate Defender. We thank the Chicago Police because they attend every year as well. The State's Attorney's Office. We have cooperation from all the different criminal justice agencies on site, so it's a phenomenal event. We usually have over 3,000 people to attend, so we know that it's very, very needed. And also, if you're not an attorney, we always need volunteers, and if you are an exhibitor or provide ex offender services, we always like to have individuals there that are able to provide ex offender services as well. A couple other things that we're involved in with the clerk's office. I am on the Criminal Justice Stakeholders Committee with the Supreme Court, where we are working on how to upgrade the pretrial services risk analysis for individuals to determine whether or not they should or should not be able to not have a bail bond or put on electronic monitoring, trying to reduce the jail overcrowding, trying to make sure that people that are low risk for reoffending are not sitting up in jail and wind up being in jail longer than their sentence finally winds up being. So we're working on that very diligently with Chief Judge Evans and many of the stakeholders as well. I'm also the chairman of the Cook County Integrated Criminal Justice Committee, and with that committee we work on several initiatives to make sure that all of our systems and business processes are working to be able to ensure that court is run in the most efficient manner. And then finally, my office is actually building an interactive court order system for judges to be able to create their own court orders electronically and submit that information to the electronic docket electronically to make court run even more efficient, so that we reduce the number of continuances, so that individuals can actually spend less time in jail where necessary, and we can also reduce jail overcrowding. We're talking about trying to make sure that justice is being provided to people in the most expeditious and efficient manner possible. That's what we're doing, and thank you so very much, State Representative Ford, for hosting this forum, and Ms. Williams, and thank you for inviting me. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you. And Dorothy, I will be talking to you to make sure you come on to talk about the event, as usual, all right? Next up, we are pleased to have a gentleman who's doing such a great job. He is Commissioner Richard Boykin, and of course, he's got all kinds of expertise, not only as an attorney, but also doing well and running the congressman's office.
Oh, I'm not running the congressman's office.
As you worked before.
I did before.
Yep, as you did.
Thank you.
So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. I've always been told that life is but a minute, just 60 seconds in it. Didn't seek it, didn't choose it, forced upon us. We generally suffer if we abuse it, that tiny little minute, but all of eternity is wound up in it. Let me thank, well, let me thank State Representative LaShawn Ford for his leadership. Let me thank him for the outstanding work that he's doing in Springfield on behalf of all of us. Let me thank Attorney Melissa Williams for her leadership as well. Thank you, Commander, for being here, and all of the panelists. Let me also thank Clerk Dorothy Brown, whom I work with. And let me thank Lynetta Turner, who's here representing President Preckwinkle. Cliff Kelly, it's always good to see you, my friend, the governor of talk radio. If you're not listening to WVON, you're missing out. Yeah, give him a round of applause, please. Cliff Kelly. WVON! Right. So let me just say this let me thank God for being here, because God woke us all up this morning, and he started us on our way and kept us in our right mind. All have sinned and come short of God's glory. There's not a perfect one among us, and so we all are in need of restoring and restoration. We're all in need in some way of some additional assistance. And so let me say, I've been in office now for about 125 days. And in that short amount of time, we focused our efforts on criminal justice reform. We've been honed in like a laser on this issue. The county budget is about $4 billion. The two biggest drivers of the county budget are health and hospitals and criminal justice issues. So the sheriff's office, the county court system, the jail, the juvenile temporary detention center. And in the jail, I want to commend Chief Judge Tim Evans, Sheriff Dart, and President Preckwinkle for reducing the population at the jail. The population used to be around 10,000 people at the jail. Currently, today, it's about 8,500. But every day, you as a taxpayer and I, we pay $143, Benny Lee, for every person in the county jail. We pay a little bit more for the third of the folks who are there who are suffering from mental illness. And so I've made a passion of mine since my campaign, announced my campaign outside of Cook County Jail, because a third of the folks in Cook County Jail are suffering from mental illness, according to Sheriff Tom Dart. Now, the greatness of our country, the greatness of our county, Judge Jackson, is determined by how well we treat our senior saints, how well we treat our children, and how well we treat those who are sick and suffering among us. And so we basically criminalized the mentally ill. That's the wrong approach. It's a costly approach,
And ultimately, when we all meet our Maker is going to ask us the question, is that you helped me when I was naked? Well, that you clothed me when I was naked? That you give me food when I was hungry? When I was thirsty, that you give me a drink? And when I was helpless, and when I didn't have anywhere to turn, were you there for me? Those are the questions that will be asked. And so we're working to reduce this pipeline to prison, this pipeline to the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. Let me tell you, if President Preckwinkle was here, she'd probably say that the intersection between race and criminal justice, you can really see the inequities in our society. Look at the county jail. We got 8,500 people. 86% of them at the county jail are people of color. 70+% of them are African Americans. The others are Hispanics of that 86%. African Americans make up 25% of Cook County, 70+% of the Cook County jail. Let's take it a step further. Juvenile Detention Center. We got 350 kids there. How do I know? Because I'm on that panel that actually hired the new superintendent for the Juvenile Detention Center. He's a new guy, came over from Wayne County in Michigan, Leonard Dixon. Good guy, he's been on the job less than a month. But he's a good guy, he's gonna help us reduce that population at the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. We pay $600 a day, Cliff Kelly, for every kid at the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center. And those kids there, 80% of that 350 are African American. So we gotta turn that around. What are some of the main things that we're focused on? Well, I've been focused on this Home and Square issue. Attorney Schiller talked about it. I don't know if he's still here, but he talked about folks who are being detained without being given access to counsel. Now, of course, Home and Square is not far from here. It's where the old Sears headquarters was. There's a police center there where they take folks. They don't have fingerprinting capability there, but they take them there, and allegedly, some of the folks have been held for a day, 2 days, without access to counsel. I'm disturbed by that, profoundly. You cannot, in the United States of America, hold somebody without access to an attorney. It violates the Constitution. It violates human rights, a basic decency. And so we've called on the Department of Justice to do an independent investigation of the Home and Square site, and maybe even to look further into the Chicago Police Department. Now, we all know the culture and the history of the Chicago Police Department. Not my friend the commander who's up here, because he's a good man, I know him. But we all know what John Burge did to hundreds of black people. He tortured them. Many of them are in jail. He's out. He never went to jail for torture. He went to jail for perjury. But he's out. He gets to enjoy his pension while the tortured victims are still behind bars, many of them. And then if that doesn't incentivize you, well, maybe cost will incentivize you. Just last year, the city of Chicago settled police misconduct cases to the tune of $54 million. $54 million is what they settled. Your money, taxpayers' dollars. They settled lawsuits for police misconduct. So we got to change the system. And so I'm proud to join with my friend in helping to change the system. We just passed in the county board just a week and a half ago an ordinance that will help us, we think, stop police from choking folks when they arrest them. Now, you all know what happened to the gentleman in New York. You know that he got choked to death, you know? So we passed a no-choke ordinance in the county. We got that done. The first unit of government to get it done. Bills are pending in Springfield. I urge you to support one of those bills in Springfield that'll ban choking by police statewide. We passed it in the county. So we're excited about that. We still got a lot of work to do. The best crime prevention measure that we can have is a job. We got to give people opportunity for jobs. And so these draconian laws that we passed, 3 strikes and you're out, we got to give people 4 balls in your own, Cliff. We got to give them employment. We got to give them education. We got to give them housing. And then, of course, we got to give them health care. And so with that said, let me say this, that I pledge to work with State Representative LaShawn Ford. I pledge to work with Attorney Melissa Williams, and I pledge to work with all of you to make our criminal justice system one that's compassionate and one that's all about restoring people to where God has called them to be. Thank you all so much. I thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Before you leave, Commissioner, before you leave, we had a quick question for you on our bills. One of them is about the Deferred Prosecution Program. And President Preckwinkle's office and her Criminal Justice Reform Commission may know about this as well. So the state's attorney has, it sounds great, a great deferred prosecution program for people who have mental health issues. They have a piece for veterans. They have a piece for just regular folks who commit not only misdemeanors but felonies as well. The issue that State Representative Ford and I have discussed is that many people don't know about the Deferred Prosecution Program, which allows you to go through a probation-like program for about a year. If you successfully complete that probation-like program, your case is thrown out. And that gives us something to expunge or to be able to seal. How many people in here know about the Deferred Prosecution Program? Raise your hands high. Okay, not enough. Not enough. So what we are proposing is that a single piece of paper be placed in every defendant's file that says, is this person eligible for deferred prosecution, yes or no? Has it been offered to them? Are they interested in participating? And that it be signed and dated by the judge, the prosecutor in the courtroom, the defense attorney, and the defendant themselves. When we mentioned this to our state's attorney, she kind of stated that most defense attorneys should know about the program. But the truth of the matter is, if you don't practice criminal defense all the time, you won't know about this program. So we need to give the people in our community a fair shot, right? So if these are people, they're nonviolent offenders, many of them are low-level offenders, we need to give them the opportunity to participate in a program like this so that way they don't end up with an X on their back to begin with that we have to try to take off. So you're pledging to work with us, and we're super excited about that. But what we're also hoping is that you can help us to push this. We have invited all of our elected officials. Unfortunately, the state's attorney was not able to be here today. And so we are asking that you all help us to push that through so that people have a fair shot not to end up, with less opportunity at jobs, less opportunity at housing, less opportunity at education, and other opportunities. So if you could commit to doing that with us, that's one of the really major things that we think would help a lot, is to push that deferred prosecution in Cook County.
You have my commitment. Great. You have my commitment. I'm on board 120%. Let me also add that the diversionary court system, where we have mental health court, we have substance abuse court, we have veterans court, those work. They work. I've seen them. I've actually gone into the courtroom and actually, participated and watched those mental health cases get resolved. You got prosecutors working together. Let me also appreciate Governor Rauner and his panel, who wants to reduce the jail population throughout the state by 25% in 10 years. That's a laudable goal. It's notable because they understand too, we can't incarcerate our way out of the issues that we have today. Thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
Give him another round of applause. He's doing a great job. Great job. Wonderful job. I'm so pleased that the consular mentioned that deferred prosecution program. And Melissa, you're absolutely correct. If people don't practice criminal law a lot, that should be something with continuing education that the Bar Association should put up. Absolutely. Because that's very important. There are a lot of people who don't use it simply because they don't know it exists. So that would be a big help. You know, and the commissioner was talking about the money you pay for police misconduct. Commissioner, in the headlines today, we're talking about the same thing with the Verneco case. The Verneco case is going to be settled and, right, of your money. And
Another case that's going to be settled for $5 million.
exactly, exactly. So it continues. So that's the only people that will stop that are people like our great elected officials that are here today, and of course LaShawn, who is just doing a great job on that. Okay, we want to get a witness to speak to us, Officer Roger L. Washington.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Roger L. Washington. I'm a proud member, 16-year member of the greatest police department on this side of heaven, and that's the Chicago Police Department. I work first watch in the 2nd District. I work midnights for civilians from 10:30 p.m. to 7:30 a.m. I had to work last night, but I would always sacrifice my time to be able to be of an encouragement and to give positive information and positive feedback from the police department. Had to endure discrimination and racism and profiling on both sides of the spectrum, from society and from the police department, but I never let that deter me from doing my job and doing my job effectively. So I am one of the proud and great members of the police department that stands for justice. I had to spend the last 10 months of my life taking some backlash from what's going on in society. I ran for alderman of the 24th Ward, and I had to adjust my platform because people wanted to put labels on police officers because of other officers in other counties and other states that are making bad decisions. I'm here to tell you that one bad apple does not spoil the bunch. I'm a man of integrity and a man of faith, and I stand firm in believing that we have to help and lift up one another in society to make things happen. I know that there are a lot of questions and a lot of ideas in society's head about the average day-to-day life of a Chicago police officer, or any police officer, especially being a police officer of color. I stand for justice. I speak at events like this on a weekly basis, but it's surreal when I have to kiss my family goodbye and say a prayer and put that uniform on every night to be a first responder when it comes to crime and comes to society. Being a man of faith, being a firm believer in God, and just being a man of integrity, I do all I can every day to mentor young people and to help them out any way I can, to let them know that society is not all bad, that there are great people here to make a difference. I belong to an organization here on the west side called MAD, Men Making a Difference, where we mentor young men with felonies and we educate them and we get them job training and we help them to get jobs, letting them know that they're not X'd out. I am a firm believer that with this panel and with you all's help, that we can take back society in a positive way and take some of this negative spotlight off our police officers. It wasn't easy for me. Being raised by a single parent, had the odds against me here on the west side of Chicago, never let that stop me, took all the positive I could, was able to get my master's degree and become a police officer, and despite of having to deal with the issues of the world, I still want to make a positive difference. You all have what God calls free will, the will to make a bad decision or a right decision. Given all the opportunities that came before me, I still made the right decisions to want to make a difference. I am always available. If you want to speak to me afterwards, I have no problem. I do mentoring. I'll even pray with you. I have to go to work tonight. So if you want to look me up, I work beat 212 Robert. That's in the second district. I work from 10:30 to 7:30. If you have any questions or if you need any assistance or any questions, I'm always available. Once again, my name is Roger L. Washington, and I stand firm, and I'm a proud member of the Chicago Police Department.
Now, that's great. I think that you could do it every day while you're working. The key is that when you see misconduct with your fellow police officers, you have to talk to them. You need to talk to all those police officers that feel that they are afraid of African American males, especially. You have to educate them. You have to let them know that there's no need to fear. Just do your job. You are at an advantage already because you had a uniform and a gun. And most black males and most men, period, have what you call pride. And no matter with the uniform or not, if a police officer or anyone sort of disrespects another male, it seems like you're gonna have this power struggle. So even in the classroom when I used to teach, you cannot win a power struggle with a kid. And I don't think that we need to, I think you just have to talk to your colleagues and let them know that they're there to police and not there to parent people when they're on patrol. And you could lead like that.
And I understand that, and that's a great segue into what we can do in the future. I'm one voice right now, and I do all I can every day, and that's why I've been so successful in the last 16 years, because I'm not afraid to speak up for what I believe in, and I've been doing this day in and day out with the capacity that I have. But if I was given a greater platform, a bigger platform that can be put together by elected officials and people of power, I can make this voice of mine be heard throughout the city of Chicago and maybe state and countrywide, because you have a lot of people who are afraid to say something or afraid to stand up for what they believe in, and I am one that is not afraid. And I've been through this time and time again. I've taken ridicule on the job and off the job. But now, since we're here as a conductive and a conducive team, we can make this happen. And I can and I will be the voice of the police department to represent and to make sure that police officers here in the city are in line and in tune into what we're saying and the mission that we're pushing off. So I have no problem at all voicing this in a small setting like this or a huge or a larger setting. Thank you. God bless you all. Thank you, Melissa, for the invite.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Officer Washington. And I love what the representative said, Representative Ford, because you're absolutely right. And like you said, he should be talking to many of the other policemen, because we know what goes on out here. And when people call the show all the time complaining about the police, which they do many times, and many times it's certainly justified, we know that, people say, well, they are good police, and we all realize that. But as you point out, the good policemen have to do something relative to, hopefully, to correct what's going on when they see something that is wrong with their own. And that's very important. Want to recognize Judge Marianne Jackson. We'll be hearing, she's with the Juvenile Justice Division. We'll be hearing from her a little later. Give her a round of applause. Okay. And let me, just before we introduce our next witness, I just want to mention the fact that it was talked about relative to the commissioner was talking about the fact that the overwhelming number of the people in the county jail are people of color. There were some visitors from France recently, and Sheriff Dart said this, that when they were leaving the county jail, they said, now where's the jail for the white people? That's pathetic, isn't it? Where's the jail for the white people? We've seen the ones for the blacks, and okay, where's the jail for the white people? And then, of course, with the mental illness, and the sheriff talks about that all the time, as was also mentioned by the commissioner, that he runs the largest mental institution in the country. There are so many people in the county jail that don't need to be there, and we know that, and this is why I'm so happy that we have some people talking about this whole issue. Our next witness is Benny Lee, please.
Hey, how are you? All right. Good to see you. Okay. Baragani. It's just going to show me some of y'all don't know your African language. That means what's happening, what's going on, what's the word for the day. I want to thank my sister Melissa for inviting me up here today, and our state rep, Shawn Ford, for putting this on, and this distinguished panel for coming out here when you had other things you could have been doing. But I want to acknowledge some of my comrades that's in the audience, Brother Randy Ryder, that's coming all the way from Aurora, who's on the front line fighting on behalf of formerly incarcerated and convicted people. Brother Earl Williams here, who headed up Williams Youth Service, another brother on the front line fighting on behalf of young people that's caught up in the system. And then Brother Rock right here is part of MAD, that Officer Rogers part of, and Brother Brandon right here that be on the front line, on the streets, trying to help people raise their consciousness. I'm one of the co-founders of the National Alliance for the Empowerment of the Formerly Incarcerated. If that's too long for you to remember, just remember NAFI. One thing I'm concerned about is juvenile parole. Juvenile parole is too long. I was a youth, I graduated right down the street at May Elementary School, right on the corner of Laverne and Congress back in 1968. I was one of the first black youth to go to Austin High School when it was a predominant white community. It was a lot of racial tension. And as a result of a race riot that happened in school, I ended up in IYC St. Charles, a juvenile prison. And coming out on juvenile parole, me and the rest of my colleagues, we ended up in the adult system. Juvenile parole today, they have to be on till they're 21 years old. That's just too long for a person to come out at 15, got to wait to 21 to get off parole. By the time he's 18, he's working, probably completed high school, and have a conflict with his mother or somebody, they violate and send him back, and he loses everything he done worked for. That's just too long. I see these cases over and over and over. Juvenile parole need to be shortened. Ex-offenders must be utilized. There's a lot of people that come out of prison that got some skills. I know a lot of adults that come out of the adult prison system, they consult with me because they know I've been out of the system now over 30 years. So I can serve as a mentor to them. There's a lot of young people coming out of juvenile facilities that are 18, 19 years old that got a desire to do something. They can go back to their community and be mentors to their peers. If programs are set up to train them to be those mentors inside these schools, they can be utilized better. They can be doing some things that's in their heart. They're the one that can reach their peers. So I think formerly incarcerated and convicted people can be utilized if we look at the expertise they have to work with the population in which they come from. Pre-release programs inside these institutions that come from the community. Like, for example, my non-for-profit. We need to get inside the prisons to work with brothers and sisters prior to being discharged to get in this mindset of reentry, how to reenter back into society. And then once they come on, then a post-release program to continue to work with them. I'm one that, even though I'm a convicted felon, I'm harder on the formerly incarcerated person than I am on regular people. That's what my most focus is at. Because a lot of us just take for granted, okay, I done got out, complain and cry and don't want to do nothing. You ask the average one of them, are they registered to vote? No, they don't vote. Well, you shouldn't even complain about nothing. You don't vote. You're not part of a community organization. You don't have a high school diploma. All you do is got a criminal background, but you haven't invested in yourself. You need to just sit down somewhere. So I believe that formerly incarcerated convicted people need to invest in themselves. I'm gonna say this and wrap it up because I know she's about to do the Sandman thing. It was in 1862 when Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation to so-called do what? Free the slave. But his dilemma was this: slaves was considered property. So he didn't have the authority to tell slave owners to let go their property, the slaves. But it passed Congress in 1865, and it became the 13th Amendment of the United States Constitution. And what do that recommend? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. The 13th Amendment pretty much suggests that no person of U.S. citizenship should be subject to slavery or indentured servitude unless otherwise convicted of a crime. What that means is once you commit a crime, you're put back in the state of a slave. How does that look today? I've been out of prison 30 years. Not only have I got a GED, I went and got an associate degree in mental health and substance abuse. I went back, got a bachelor's degree in inner city studies. Then I went and got a master's degree in leadership development and education. I done worked in some of the largest drug programs in this state. But if I walk inside of a Walmart or Home Depot and they tell me, Mr. Lee, we don't want to hire you because you black, I can sue them for discrimination because of the work blacks did as a group. If they say, well, we don't want to hire you because you're gay, I can sue them for discrimination because of the work the gay community has done as a group. If they say we don't want to hire you because you're handicapped, I can sue them for discrimination because the handicapped community came together and fought for their human rights. But if they say we don't hire you because you got a conviction in your background, I am unprotected. The 13th Amendment put the nail in the coffin. It was just a few months ago I was invited to Congress with Congressman Danny Davis to speak at a hearing with the Congressional Black Caucus. And one of the questions I posed to Congress then was that you would say I paid my debt to society because I've been out 30 years, I'm completed parole, I'm working, I done bought a home, I don't own it, you know, I still pay a mortgage on it, because if I don't pay that mortgage, the real owner gonna show up, right? So I'm not a homeowner yet. So you would say I paid my debt to society. But if I paid my debt to society, why is it that people can still say they wouldn't hire me because of my background, or wouldn't rent to me because of my background, or I can't receive Section 8 subsidized housing because of my background? Those are called collateral consequences. These are not punishment, these are service disabilities to disable people that's trying to get their lives together. So the debt really hasn't been paid. So I propose to Congress that they need to put that debt in writing. It needs to be in writing with a period behind it. I believe once it's put in writing, then if anyone discriminated against me after that, then I have the ground to sue for discrimination. Until that day comes, I'm unprotected. Thank you for allowing me this time.
Make sure you give me the number for me. Okay. Give him another round of applause. I think that's great. Want to introduce two more people that are doing a great job in Illinois General Assembly. State Representative Mary Flowers. Thank you so much for being here. And also State Representative Camille Lilly. Good to see you both. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Coming up next, representing the Honorable Tony Preckwinkle, the Cook County Board President, is Anita Hayes Turner, who is the Cook County Justice Advisory Council. Please. How are you? Good to see you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I won't take too many minutes of your time. I just really wanted to, first of all, thank you all for having the President's representation here today. As many of you know, the Justice Advisory Council is the President's platform for her criminal justice and juvenile justice reform. So even before taking office in 2010, President Preckwinkle has worked many, many years to what we say right-size the system. As Commissioner Boykin said, she does often say that the jail is the intersection of race and poverty. And that goes for not only the jail where the adults are, but also the juvenile justice system. So I would be remiss if I did not talk about some of our initiatives on the county level around legislation, our HB 172. Which passed out of committee on March 10th, and we have a similar bill on the Senate side, which is SB 1785. And what that does is in automatic transfer laws. So I will say briefly that automatic transfer laws, what they do is they keep our young people trapped in the adult criminal justice system. So for very specific crimes, murder, aggravated criminal sexual assault, aggravated battery with a firearm, armed robbery with the firearm, those are the primary ones. If you are charged as a juvenile, sometimes as young as 13, but 15 and up, you are automatically transferred to adult court. And that happens without a hearing. It is simply based on the charges and your age, and the prosecutor has the ability to try and sentence you in adult court. And so what that ends up doing is putting our young people in the adult system, and we know based on research and evidence that they don't fare well. They are more likely to commit more serious crimes when they get out, and as some of the gentlemen has said, they have the X on their back for the rest of their lives. So we are at the the county level trying to change that and make sure that every child gets a hearing in front of a juvenile court judge to make that grave decision about whether or not their crime should be tried in juvenile court where they have the ability to be rehabilitated, or in adult court when often those services aren't there. So I'm asking for everyone's support on that. And then, yes.
Can you give us the bill number?
Yes, HB 172 and SB 1785 in the Senate. And that bill in HB 172 is being carried by Representative Nekrich, who has been a staunch supporter of the bill, and she's the primary sponsor on that. The other thing, and I've listened to everyone here, and I think one of the things that we could offer is around how do we put the money where it really needs to be. So when we're talking about restorative justice, when we're talking about reentry, when we're talking about reducing the jail population and the detention population, what often gets left on the table is how do we reallocate our priorities through financial incentives to make sure that the communities get the resources that they need so people do not cycle in and out of the juvenile justice system and the criminal justice system. So the president and the Board of Commissioners allocate funds every year. We wish it was more, but we're doing the best with what we have. So we do have restorative justice money for those service providers or community-based organizations that are in the room today. They will be out in the summer, and we currently have funds that you can apply for around violence prevention. So really trying to say, yes, funds for violence prevention. And so I will provide the link information to Ms. Williams so that she can circulate it broadly. We want organizations who are doing the work to apply for those funds to really be working with the young people and working with the adults in the community, because that's where we need the money, that's where we need the resources. So violence prevention, the RFP is out now, and restorative justice funds, there's $500,000 allocated to that that will be out in the summer. So just wanted to add those two things.
Thank you so much, Ms. Turner. Great information, and I wouldn't ask you this anyway, but I did see in the news, and we can't always believe what's in the news, that the president is not really pleased with the state's attorney, and I hope that's true. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We can do a lot better with that, that's for sure. Our next witness is James Johnson, please. Mr. Johnson.
Let me say this while he's on his way.
Sure.
Lunch is also on its way.
Okay.
So, you know, don't let your stomach rumble too much. We're going to roll through, and when we hear that lunch is here, then we're going to go ahead and we'll recess for lunch. But we're going to keep rolling through until we hear that it's here.
Thank you. Oh, here he is. Hey, how are you?
Great. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. First and foremost, I'd like to give a shout out to the Lord Jesus Christ for bringing me this far. It's an honor to be here. Thanks to State Rep. Shawn Ford and Attorney Melissa Williams for inviting me to speak at today's panel. I wrote down a few things. I thought I was supposed to come here to discuss the clemency process. I just found out that I was denied my clemency about a month ago. I was represented by Cabrini Green Legal Services. And I always thought that I was going to be stuck with this background situation. So I really wasn't trying to get my record cleared. But my son's mom, her dad is a cop, and he took a liking to me, and he said, you know, I think you're a bright young man, and, you know, this background of yours is really in the way. You know, I've seen you do so much with it. You should try to get rid of it so you can go further. So I always ducked and dodged them, you know, and it's kind of funny how things happen. God sent them to come get me one day, right? Because we had this conversation over and over and over. And he came and got me this one particular time, and he was like, I need you to go somewhere with me. So I'm like, where we going? He's like, don't worry about it. So we hop out of the car in front of the Daily Center downtown, and I remember he walked me into this building and walked me up to this desk and said, now tell these people what's wrong with you. So the clemency process started. So lo and behold, I was already volunteering getting involved in community activism with Action Now, which I'm currently an employee for. I'm an activist and a community organizer with Action Now. But this journey started, and it was kind of interesting because, you know, I didn't want to do it, but God sent somebody into my life to start the process. And I went to Springfield, moved down to Springfield, Illinois for 2.5 years. I just got back 7 months ago, and down in Springfield, I organized neighborhoods around vacant property ordinance and criminal activity in communities, a whole bunch of different stuff that, you know, we were empowering people to take control of. So I had a lot of letters of recommendation. I had a former employer. He submitted a letter of recommendation. A couple of people at the state capitol, state senators, state reps that submitted letters of recommendation. People from the city council of Springfield submitted letters of recommendation about the work that I was currently involved in, and I still was denied. I don't know if it was the quality of my petition for clemency. People at home that's watching, anybody here that's dealing with the clemency process, my advice is when you go, be prepared, because you have to give a biography, a testimony about your life, your upbringing, what happened to cause you to commit offenses or whatever the case may be. And when I was walked into this, it was kind of like Johnny on the spot.
Let's get his son up while he's speaking, because this is what it's all about. Come on, because he's a father and he's got to take care of this young man. Come on, stand by your dad.
Yeah, this is my son. This is my son, Anthony Johnson, and you know, I'm proud to be his dad. He's been on the honor roll now for, I want to say, 2 years consistently. So, you know, I just want to let you know, son, you know, I love you for that, and I'm proud to be your dad. But back to the clemency process. After I went through after I had done all of this work, my clemency was denied by the governor before he left office, and it kind of summed it up to what I already knew what was going to happen, because I had talked to people previously, and they called the prison review board the prison denial board. And even with all of these great letters of recommendation, I still wasn't able to meet the criteria. And today we were sent here to make recommendations to you all in reference to what should be done. When I was young, I didn't raise my hand and say I wanted to be a drug dealer. I didn't raise my hand and say I wanted to be in a gang. And the nucleus of the problem, it starts at a small stage. It starts when a person is real young. I've seen a lot of severe cases of poverty and bad parenting growing up in the Chicago public school system. I was just telling some of the men right here on the panel earlier that when I was in grammar school, when I was about his age, school felt a lot like prison. But when I got older and went to prison, prison felt a lot like school. And dealing with the things that I've seen throughout life, I realized what the problem is. One recommendation is take control of the pipeline of prison. That's the first and foremost thing. It starts at an early age. There was not, when I was 10, when our household fell apart, my dad left my mom. My mom was on dialysis. She did not have a job. We lived off of $400 a month until I was like 18. We lived below the poverty line. There were no resources available in that school system, no adults available to help with that situation. I wasn't the only one dealing with it though. So I started asking kids that were coming to school with new clothes and haircuts, how were they making their money? And they told me how. So I joined them. And some of that money went towards helping my mom. So I think that there should be more social workers in schools, counselors. I think that the D and the F student, there should be more focus on the D and F student to find out why are they making D's and F's. Because ultimately, if nobody pays that child any attention, then eventually what happens is that child eventually drops out of school, joins the gang, and thinks that the drug industry is how they're going to survive for the rest of their lives. Another thing I've seen is that a lot of people think that the solution to addressing criminal behavior in our communities is by building youth centers for the kids to go play at. And those are good, don't get me wrong, those are fine and dandy. But how you gonna have my kid come play ball at your gym and then send them back to me and I can't get a job to take care of them? And that's one of the biggest problems that we're facing now. My offenses is over 15 years now. And people keep telling me, well, James, you're a bright young man, you should go to college and you should do this. Why should I go to college and get a degree when 9 times out of 10 I'm not gonna be able to get an occupation in that field that I have this degree in, but I'm on the fence for a student loan that I gotta pay whether I work at McDonald's or I don't have a job at all, I still gotta pay these people. Just doesn't make sense. So, like they said earlier, we were sent here to make recommendations. I think that maybe someone should look into seeing if there's a way that records can be sealed if a person displays that they've paid their debt to society and they have a consistent work record. I have a consistent work history in spite of my disability. I've had a consistent work history since 2002 when I was released, and that's a blessing from the Lord because honestly, I didn't think that I was going to be able to ever get a job, but God opened up doors by way of relationships and favor, and I don't feel that a person should have to be able to develop relationships outside of the regular application process to get a job. I feel that you should be able to walk into an establishment, fill out an application, and get you a job. But that's not the case. That's not the case at all. It's kind of like, I feel like the system want people to go to jail. And I've worked in a commercial real estate setting where I found out that prisons are being purchased by large multi-billion-dollar corporations. So, I mean, in my opinion, it's unfair and it's unjust for a person to serve their time, get out, and get told that they can't work. And I don't want to sit here and keep reiterating or saying the same things over, but I honestly feel that it starts out with the children. If you want to see better children, you need to help the parents become better parents. You need to lift these laws that's tying the hands of these parents, that's forcing the parents to show a poor version of leadership to their children. I've experienced that. I had an opportunity up in Springfield to work for the Urban League. I was already doing a lot of community organizing up there. We were going before city council, presenting issues around disparate impact concerning individuals with records reintegrating back into the community. I was doing that for free. A position for a jobs leads coordinator opened up there with the Urban League, and when I applied, I was denied on the fact that I had a felony. So what ended up happening was I kept looking for jobs and the felony thing kept coming up. So shouts out to Action Now, man, because they showed me love. I came back to Chicago. Action Now said, we know we trained you, we sent you up there, you can come back to Chicago and work for us. So I came back to Chicago and Action Now hired me. So I'm currently doing activism for Action Now. But I mean, there's a certain financial barrier I've seen when it comes to being able to have a job. You got jobs and you got good jobs. And the difference between a job and a good job will allow you to save some money. A job will just allow you to have some money. And I'm at that middle ground right now, career-wise, where I'm trying to figure out how to have money to put aside for him to go to college, to travel and show him a better quality of life. And at times it gets frustrating. It even tampers with my faith from moment to moment. But you know, I know that God has brought me this far, he'll get me further. But I don't want to take up a lot of you all's time, but I really believe that the nucleus to the problem is in the education system, with the children being exposed to all these harsh realities. If criminal behavior is an epidemic, and now it's even popular, if it's an epidemic, there needs to be something done to address the epidemic of crime and poverty in our communities. The drug dealing, I've seen kids as young as 8 years old that sell drugs. I've seen my classmates when I was young involved in gangs and getting killed and stuff, and there was absolutely nothing being done to address those epidemics. If you want to stop people from becoming criminals, we need to address what's being done with these children in our school, and that'll help grow better adults. If you want to see better children, you need to help their parents become better parents by allowing them to work. Most of the parents that have been to jail, they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s now, and they've learned from their mistakes, and they're saying they want to provide a better life, they want to live a better life, but they're not being allowed to, and I think that's unfair. That's all I got.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and keep things moving along. On your bills sheet for the proposals that we have out, there are a couple of things that we want to bring up in reference to what Mr. Johnson just said. One of them is dealing specifically with ceiling +10 in Illinois. Just so that you can put in perspective the epidemic that we're talking about, we're not talking about a few 100,000 people. We're talking about numbers in the millions around the state of Illinois of people who are ex-offenders and who are dealing with this issue even though they may be suffering in silence. So one of the proposals that we have, and we've had it, so it needs to be a bill pretty soon, is talking about people who are nonviolent offenders and they've served their sentences successfully and it's over and it's done with and it's been 10 years or more. If it's been 10 years or more, regardless of whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, if it's nonviolent, we need to be able to seal that so that these people can get jobs and they can get back to life and they can support their families and they can hold their heads high. So that's one of the proposals. There's another bill that Representative Ford and the folks in the General Assembly have on the table now, and we need to push this to make it law. When you're trying to seal your record, there's what's called a waiting period. Currently, that waiting period is 4 years from the time that you complete your last sentence. I think that Clerk Brown mentioned this earlier. 4 years, can you imagine? You just got off of parole and you have to wait 4 years, which means no job for 4 years for a lot of people, right? No housing for a lot of people. Half the people in Chicago are homeless because they're ex-offenders. The Chicago Coalition for the Homeless has told us that, right? So we need to reduce that waiting period. The study shows 2 years. If people have completed their sentence and 2 years have passed, and they haven't reoffended, they're probably not going to reoffend, so let's seal their record. 4 years is too long. We have evidence that 2 years will work. Let's work it. We need to reduce it. So if you're interested, and we hope you are, right? Even if you don't testify, fill out a witness slip that says that you are a supporter of House Bill 1118. That says reduce the waiting period for sealing from 4 years to 2 years. I'm going to be quiet. Give it to Mr. Kelly so he can pass it along.
Okay. You are great. Listen, is Mary going to be speaking?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. She's great, isn't she? Yeah. Yes, absolutely. You're doing a great job. Attorney Melissa Williams, you know, she's telling me what to do, of course. And there's a great story about the CIA needed an assassin. And they put out an RFP, and you know, there were a lot of people unemployed, so the committee looked at and they selected 3, 2 men and a woman, and they wanted the first guy, and he came in, and they talked to him, and they said, "Sir, you have to realize that if you're going to be an assassin for the CIA, you have to do exactly what we tell you to do, without any equivocation, any questioning." "Okay, fine. Your wife's in that room. Take this gun and go in there and kill her." And he said, "I'm not going to do that. You got to be crazy." They said, "Well, we can't use you." So the second guy came in. He said, "Well, he sounds pretty good, you know, his resume and all." So they told him the same thing. If you're going to work for us, you have to do exactly what we tell you to do without any question. Just do it. Fine. Your wife's in that room in there. Take this gun and go in there and kill her. He said, oh, wow. I don't want to do that, but I really want this job. And he goes in and he comes out a few minutes later. He's all upset. He's crying. And they said, take your wife and go home. So they said, well, the third person is this woman, and we'll talk to her. As soon as we get rid of her, we'll ask them for 3 more. The woman comes in and they tell her the same thing. You know, you have to do what we tell you to do. Fine. Your husband's in there, in that room in there. He's sitting in a chair. Go in there and kill him with this gun. And she says, I can do that. So she goes in, they hear shots, they hear screaming, they hear beating on the walls, and she comes out all disheveled, and she said, the damn gun was loaded with blanks. I had to kill him with the chair. You want a job done? Give it to a woman, right? That's what she's doing for me today. We're going to bring up, speaking of great ladies and doing a great job in the Illinois General Assembly, Representative Mary Flowers. South side, right. Yeah.
It's been so long.
Sweetie.
Good to
Come
see
on.
you. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I would give me this opportunity, if I may, to thank Melissa Williams and Representative Ford for putting on this great event. It's long overdue. And Representative Ford, see, this is what happened when young people get to the House of Representatives. They want to come in telling all of us elderly people all of our business. But it has been my pleasure to serve you in the Illinois House of Representatives for the last 30 years. And I started off with my brother here, Judge Evans. They always think we're sisters and brothers because of our bulging eyes. And Cliff Kelly, who was there back in the day as well. Some of the rest of you wasn't born. How are you, sir? Such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. Mr. Johnson, I just want to say to you, thank you, sir, for being the man that I know you are and the men that we have in our community. I love Representative Ford because I have the opportunity to tell him all the things that I would want someone else to know to be able to carry on. I told Representative Ford that it's only been since 1996 that we, as African Americans, have been able to be a family. It was because of President Clinton. He said, okay, if you're on aid, you can now get married. He said, okay, if you're on aid, you can now go to work. If you are on aid, you can get a job and go to school. See, we were complying with the law. We could not go to school. My daddy had to leave my mama. So when people are talking about, well, what happened to the African American family and how did it break up? The law. We was following the federal law. And so with that being said, I need for young people to understand that our parents and grandparents are not around because they didn't love us or didn't think nothing of us, but they were complying with the law. Had they been caught there, the mother would have lost her home, she would have lost her check, and the guy probably would have, or our dads or grandparents would have been thrown in jail. So, with that being said, that was the breakup of the family. No excuse, because some of us made it because of it. But the fact of the matter is, our educational system in our community is gone as well. There's a pipeline, there is really a pipeline from our schools to the prisons, and it was created. It was created when they started putting the old books in the school. It was really created with the Brown versus the Board of Education because it was separate and still unequal. As a result of it being unequal, we didn't have up-to-date books. We didn't have the same facility, yet we take the same test, expect to pass at the same rate, but things were not equal. Then our kids were being put back in school. They were saying that they're disabled, couldn't read, couldn't write, but no one ever taken into consideration the environment in which they lived in their homes. They saw their brothers and sisters and neighbors being murdered, shot down in the streets. They never thought the impact that it will have on a child's life and the growing up and trying to go to school, trying to read, trying to write, and trying to do all the things that other kids are doing in other communities that's not dealing with the same types of situations. With that being said, when you factor in all of the ills as far as the criminal background, I'm fortunate to say that I had the pleasure of sitting on the task force under Governor Quinn to be on the task force to deal with eradicating not only Representative Ford's bill dealing with the box, but to have people who are or have criminal backgrounds, not to let that be a factor in you getting the job. Now, when you have a criminal background and if you go looking for a job, they have to judge you on your merits, and at the very end, after they've offered you the job, they can then ask, do you have a criminal background? And long as that background is not, it doesn't have anything to do with the job that you're getting, you should be able to be hired or you can sue. It is a federal law and it's a state law. There's a couple bills that I have. One is dealing with housing to allow people that are ex-offenders to be able to move into the housing project. Right now, it can happen, but it's up to someone else's discrimination as whether or not they want you to move in or not. I want it to be the law. I don't want it to be up to someone else. I want there to be a period where you could, a period as well as a place where you can appeal if you are denied. The school closings that we've had in our community, that is something that we should really be concerned about, because once again, when you have closed the schools, that means there are fewer kids going to school. And as a result of fewer kids going to school, we know more kids are going to prison. And as a result of more kids going to prison, we do know the next generation will not be able to be self-sufficient, will not be a tax contributor, will be a tax burden. So it's incumbent upon all of us to have an insult level and say enough is enough in regards to what's going on in our community as far as lack of jobs, lack of education, lack of opportunities. And with that being said, I just want to say thank you again, and I appreciate you.
You're wonderful.
Thank you. Give her another round of applause. She's done a great job. Appreciate it. Beautiful eyes, right.
We're gonna do something real quick.
Sure.
We would like for, I'm gonna let Attorney Melissa Williams do the introduction of the Chief Judge.
Oh, okay.
But before, I think Representative Lilly and Judge Jackson, if we could do 3 minutes so that we could break for lunch, but I think she's gonna do a proper introduction.
That's
of you.
fine. That'll be
Right.
great. All right. I will give this up. I thought I was going to get it, but that's quite all right.
Make me this ass.
You are wonderful.
Okay, we are going to do this quickly. We're getting some great information out here from both sides, so this is very exciting. We have with us today the Chief Judge, the Circuit Court of Cook County. How often can we say that we've been here, you know, with so many wonderful legislators that have come, so many officials that have come to be with us, so many people who are just speaking out quite honestly about the system and what needs to be changed. We will hear from everyone that wants to speak, you know, so we'll hear from everyone else after lunch. But I do want to say this about the Chief Judge. He's someone that we long have admired. We have a number of John Marshall students that are here that are working on this project. And our Chief Judge, we have to give a shout out to our own law school. We're going to toot our own horn right quick. He is an alum of the John Marshall Law School. So his face is on our wall of judges that we have, and it's been there for quite some time. And we really do look up to you, and whenever we call you, we appreciate the fact that you do come out. And we appreciate the fact that you're here today so that we can do some real reform.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melissa, for that very kind and generous introduction. You're right. John Marshall Law School is a school that I'm very proud of. They have avoided discrimination for over a century. They have always welcomed African Americans, women, and others at a time when most schools discriminated against us. So a shout out for John Marshall Law School is appropriate. Thank you. And I also want you to know that Cliff went to John Marshall Law School as well. Let's give Cliff a great round of applause. I'm pleased to be here with all of the panel members, and I certainly have appreciated the information that I've heard so far from Brother Johnson and his family plight. I appreciate that. I'd like to mention 2 or 3 things while I'm here, and of course I intend to take back to the court those suggestions that are coming out of the presentations today. One of the things that I want to mention before we get to the specifics is Representative Flowers talked about our bulging eyes. She said, I say they're beautiful eyes. Don't you think she has beautiful eyes? 3 or 4 things. The first thing is jail overcrowding. You've heard about it down through the many months, and I want you to know that that is being addressed. We don't want to see people in jail who don't need to be in jail. And I just want you to know that this is an ongoing process. The total number of people in Cook County Jail that would overcrowd that facility would be 10,500. When I first started working on this, the average number in Cook County Jail was over 11,000. As of today, there is no overcrowding there. We are down below 8,000 people in the county jail, so we're moving in the right direction. Secondly, I want to say this. You've heard a little bit about the bail system, and this bail system that we have now, we've trained the judges to use other means by which to protect the public. And you know what I mean by that is this. We assume and presume that anyone who's been arrested is presumed innocent. But the state statutes passed by our colleagues who are here require the judges to take a look at 36 different things before they can release someone. And the numbers now being released on electronic monitoring are astronomical. But we still wish to protect the public, and we still wish to follow the law to make certain that anyone who is released, whether it's on their personal recognizance or whether it's on electronic monitoring, will do 2 things. One, they have to come to court when they're supposed to. And Judge Sawyer here has worked with us on issues like that back when he was the chief judge. Glad to see him today. So they have to come to court when they're supposed to. And secondly, they have to avoid committing any crime hurting the public while they're out. And if you know anyone who's been released under this improved process, please urge them to come to court when they're supposed to and to avoid any conflict with the law while they're out, because you know how this works. We've moved that average from 11,000 down to below 8,000. But if people start to violate that, then you'll see the statistics go up again. So I think our legislators are entitled to a great round of applause for liberalizing what we can consider as judges, and I appreciate that very, very much. The second thing I want to mention is something that I know is not necessarily popular, but it does impact on our community, and I want you to know a little bit about that. Many of our sisters and brothers get involved in prostitution, And our society is not happy about many of the people who are engaging in that kind of conduct. And in many instances, they have been thrown away. That's the way I view it. Well, we say these people are still from our community. They're our neighbors, they're our sisters, they are our relatives, and we want to try to help them. So what we have done is, once again, we have to thank our legislators. They have moved the general charge on prostitution from a felony to a misdemeanor to make it easier for us to help them. Let's give them another great round of applause for that. Appreciate it. And I want you to know that the programs that we've already started start with many, and about 90% of the people who are charged with prostitution are female. They come in, they are under the thumb of the not only the Johns that they service, but also the pimps and others. And the programs that we have in place pull them out of that system. We help them get a GED. We help them get housing out of that system, and we help them to get a job. And instead of them saying that they want to go back to the prostitution, they come out saying, giving honor to God, who is the head of my life. And I think we're moving in the right direction. Another thing I want to mention is this, and I know times are hard. That was a time when foreclosures were about 16,000 a year in Cook County, and that's a huge number. But after 2008, that number jumped from 16,000 to over 52,000. 52,000 people losing their homes because of foreclosures. And we found out that each one of the judges who were hearing these cases, and we had 10 judges hearing these cases every day, each judge would have something like 100 cases before that judge on a given day. And 9 out of the 10 people who were charged with the foreclosure issues were not showing up. And you know why they weren't showing up. They thought our judges were like the Judge Judys of the world. They thought our judges were going to humiliate them or call them names or say, or didn't you read what you signed, or humiliate them in some way. So what we did was this. We trained lawyers to represent these residents free of charge. And we also trained mediators to help them negotiate with the banks and all of those kinds of things to help them get their documents together. And if you know someone who is going through foreclosure and they don't have the money, you know, normally if they're going through foreclosures, they can't afford to hire a lawyer because they can't pay their mortgages. So if you know somebody who's going through the foreclosure process, if they call my office, and I'll give you my number before I take my seat, we can provide them with a free lawyer. We can provide them with a mediator to negotiate with their bank, and we can help them try to save their homes. Now, in this process that I've described to you, over 5,000 of those foreclosures have been saved. People now come to court, they get this help, and we help them save their homes. So please spread the word on that. We don't want to see anybody lose their homes who don't have to. Many of them have defenses, legal defenses, and they don't know it. And assure them, nobody's going to put them down. We realize that people need their homes. That's their castle. That's what they taught us in law school, right? A home is the castle. Let me, in concluding my remarks, mention one additional thing. We have a new system that is coming on board in July of this year for the bail court system, where we will no longer be relying heavily on bonds, how much a person can put up for a bond. It's called the Public Safety Assessment Tool. And all of the judges who hear the bond court cases, all of the prosecutors, all of the public defenders, the clerks, the sheriffs, all are being trained from January of this year to the end of June. So we'll start this new process July 1st. And we hope at that time no one will have to stay in jail because they can't afford to pay to get out. They will use what's called a risk assessment tool, which assesses the chances that somebody we let out will either not come to court when they're supposed to, or they will commit a crime while they're out. So I'll tell you more about that when we have more time. The last thing I would hope that our colleagues in the legislature would do to help us is to try to help the mentally ill. People are in jail, and I don't know if the sheriff was here, but if he had come, he would have said that his jail is the largest mental health institution in the country. Because so many of the people who end up getting arrested are people who can't help it. They don't have the mental health that they need. And I'm just telling you this, no one should have to go to jail before they can get help for being mentally ill. We need to stop that in our society. We need to provide help for the mentally ill before they commit a crime so we can treat them like human beings. Thank you very, very much. Oh yes, phone number. The telephone number that I wanted to give to you that you call is 312-603-6000. 312-603-6000. And tell them that you'd like to be connected to the judge's system that helps provide free foreclosure assistance. And you'll be going to the 28th floor of the Daly Center. That's where all of the coordinators are. The free lawyers are at 69 West Washington, right across the street. If you come down there, we can sign you up, we can get a lawyer to represent you, we can help deal with the banks. And you know, the banks see you come in without a lawyer, you know, they start to smile. But if they see you come in with a lawyer who knows the law as well as they do, sometimes better, they will respect you and you got a chance to save your homes. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Appreciate you, buddy.
We got to talk on, we got to put you on the air on some of these issues.
I love it.
Okay, all right. Give him another round of applause. He's doing a great job. Doing a great job, and thanks so much for stopping and giving all this great information. And again, the organizers of this, State Rep and wonderful Melissa, doing a great job. Let's bring forth now Judge Mary Ann Jackson, please. Juvenile Justice Division. Mm-hmm. Good to see you here.
It's good to see you.
Right.
Good morning. Good morning. I don't want to spend a lot of time this morning because the reality is, as I sit here listening, some of the things I've said I've always heard other people say. But there are a couple of comments and observations that I have. Certainly with respect to the thing about the state's attorney's diversion program. Yeah, all defense lawyers ought to know about the state's attorney's diversion program. But the reality is this is their program. They should know on day one whether or not somebody is eligible to participate in that program. So you can draw whatever conclusion you want to about the fact that they don't put as many people in their program as are probably eligible to go in that program. Moving right along. I certainly heard Commissioner Boykin talking about the number of young people being held in the detention center, and someone spoke about the automatic transfer. All we want you to know is that a very significant number of those young people who are still being held in the detention center are what we call automatic transfers. That is, because of the nature of the charge against them, the state attorney gets to make the decision that that kid should come to adult court as opposed to juvenile court. That decision should be in the hands of the judges in the Juvenile Justice Division, and that is my recommendation to you. Judges, impartial people, should be making the decision about whether a child should have to come into the adult system. And the reality is that a lot of times, even after that kid goes over to 26th in California and gets prosecuted as an adult, the judges there don't want to keep the case. They want to send the case back to juvenile court for there to be a juvenile court probation officer if the kid winds up on probation, and juvenile court services, because they realize that they are not in the position to help that kid in that building. The decision should be in the hands of the juvenile court judges. That's my recommendation. Sir, you are absolutely right about a focus needs to be more on children. I see this calamity in my courtroom day in and day out. Children don't want to go to school. The reality is, as a judge, I can't make a kid go to school. Now, there can be some consequences I can impose on them for not going, but I can't make a kid go to school. Part of the reason why they're not there is you're absolutely right. They out on the street doing some other things that they find more interesting, like standing on corners selling drugs. If a kid can make $80, $90, or $100 or more standing on the street corner selling drugs, Judge Jackson can talk all she wants to about how important education is. That kid is probably going to wind up out on the corner selling drugs. We have to acknowledge one very unpleasant fact. The drug dealer is the largest employer in the neighborhood. Now that's the truth. Drug money pays rent. Drugs money buys food, clothing, shoes, pay light bills, telephone bills, and for us to think that just because we tell them they ought not do it, they're going to stop, you're crazy. That's about what it comes down to. You're just absolutely crazy. So, as a community, we have to find more ways. We have to ask our legislatures to help us, but the business community must be pulled into this as well. There needs to be jobs in our communities. And if there are jobs in our communities, then parents can take care of their children, can do some things that allow you to hold your head up high, take care of your children, and then I don't see your children in my courtroom as much. What we really need the community to understand is that courts are not social service agencies. They were not set up like that. They were never designed to do that. Now, do I wear my social service hat all the time? Yes, I'm always acting as a social worker because I'm dealing with kids. But it's a stretch in order to be able to do that, because that is not typically what the job is designed for. So, one of the last things I want to say this morning is, community, we have to come to the understanding that government cannot solve all problems. The room should be full. It should be overflowing. Should be people lined up outside trying to get in here. And until we can find a way to wake up some more of our neighbors and get them to understand that, you know, I like scandal too. But it's a scandal that it's not more of them in here. That's the scandal. The scandal is when only 30% of our folk go to the polls when we have the most historic election that's taking place in this city. That's a scandal. And it affects us in all ways. So yeah, the judge came here this morning to say to you, I can't help y'all solve all problems. Those that I can, I will. But we have to get involved and engaged on many more fronts. many more fronts. Because yes, people who come through the criminal justice system can change given the opportunity to do so. I met that man right there for the first time in my life when he was in chains in a courtroom. I'm talking about Benny Lee. And I'm not saying anything that Benny doesn't usually stand up and tell people when he sees me in a room. He is an outstanding citizen now. Given the chance and opportunity, other people who come through the criminal justice system can do the same thing. They just have to be given the opportunity, and some of the barriers that show up in front of them have to be removed. You know, people should be able to borrow money to go to school, because you talked about getting paying off the student loan. You got to be able to get it first, and sometimes because of the conviction, you can't even get it, so you ain't got to worry about paying for it, you can't get it. Some more of these impediments need to be removed from people who are trying to re-enter the system, and that way I can spend my time concentrating on people who need to be in my courtroom, who need the attention of the justice system. Thank you.
She speaks the truth. You know, when she mentioned, Judge, when you mentioned the people selling drugs, a gentleman called on my show and said that he was in some sort of business, and he was responding to a potential client who asked him to come by her home, some kind of construction. And there was a young man standing out in front, and he said he had on regular clothing, but you know, he could have been an undercover policeman. And this young man was trying to sell him some drugs. And he said, no, no, get away from me. So he goes in and talks to the lady, and she's great. And he thought, I need to tell her that there was some creep out in front of her house trying to sell me some drugs so she'll know about it. Before he was able to tell her, this same creep, as she called him, sticks his head in the door. Ma, you got change for a 50? Sure, it's just what you, yeah.
Can I say?
Sure.
I learned this lesson the very hard way one time. I have a kid in front of me, 13 years old, and I'm laying into him about the fact that he's out there selling drugs. And I asked him, I said, how much money did you make? He dropped his head. I said, answer me. $200. I said, and what did you do with that $200? Because I anticipated that he was going to tell me he bought some gym shoes or some clothes, some boots. He said, gave it to my grandmother. And when I looked over there at her, she dropped her head down like that. It was like, okay. Yeah. Now we see this is what we're dealing with.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Judge. Appreciate the great job you're doing. And now we're going to hear from another one of our great state legislators. You know, Representative Ford, you have really put together a great team here. You and Melissa, you got everything. And Ms. Williams. Representative Camille Lilly. Give her a big round of applause.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I first want to say I just came from another, I would say, town hall meeting to talk about our state budget. And I've been filled up with concern ever since. Today, I'm here, and I want to thank Representative Ford and Melissa and the panel that they've put together today to bring up such a issue that should have been talked about a long time ago. And I am still filled. I will be headed to Loretto Hospital after this to talk with Congressman Danny K. Davis about women, leadership, and policy issues. And I'm sure I will be filled then. The good news I want to say about all of this is that I am not alone, and you are not alone. Together we can, and I believe we will, change and make lives better. I too agree with you, Mr. Johnson, that education is priority. I'm in Springfield along with my colleagues, Representative Ford and Representative Flowers, shouting from the desk, education should be the #1 priority budget item in our state. And I am hoping that everyone joins me with that resounding fund education first. With that being said, I've joined Representative Ford with the issue of restorative justice. And I have 3 bills that I am working on with Representative Ford and Mary Flower and many of my colleagues in Springfield. The first one is House Bill 3212. It is to remove the lifetime ban of persons coming home from the correctional system from working in healthcare settings. That is wrong. Please take a look at that bill, because it does create jobs and opportunity for jobs for individuals who have done their time, who have paid their time for the service, for the things that they did that were probably not the best decisions in their lives. We should not ban anyone from getting a job who wants to work and take care of their families. House Bill 3212.
They should hear it, because the fact is, it's a lifetime ban. It says you could never,
ever
in
work
your life work in what field?
Healthcare.
Period. You just can't ever do it.
And that does not bring the hope to anyone who's coming home from the correctional system, who's paid their dues, and who has really wanting an opportunity and needing an opportunity to get back into our society. The second bill is House Bill 3270. When you're coming home from that stay, we are not connecting you with the most needed, in my opinion, resource, which is health care. So this bill, before anyone is discharged from the correctional system, they will be enrolled on the Affordable Health Care Act 90 days before they're released. So when you come home, you have health care. You may not have a job yet, but you have health care that can address your issues that you were probably dealing with while you're in the system. It is important. If you don't have your health, you don't have much else. House Bill 3270. And the last bill, I'm working with Representative Ford that I want to talk about, and we've talked about it in reference to mental health. We are looking to figure out how we can address the mental health issues that are affecting our young people early on, and most people are miscategorizing them as mental health issues. They're naming them problem children. They're naming them other things that are just not correct. We would like to put within the school system an opportunity for our young people, along with at kindergarten, 6th grade, 9th grade, where you are going to be assessed for your medical, make sure you get your medical health needs met. You also have the opportunity to get a screening and/or assessment for your mental health needs. So if a young person has a mental health need in kindergarten, we are connecting them to that resource in kindergarten. Not waiting till they're in the 7th grade and they have not received any services and care in reference to that concern, and therefore they're on the wrong path. So those are the 3 bills that are human services, human capacity, human resources for our families and our community. And with that, I want to thank Benny, Mr. Johnson, for the courage to be here today to share your story and give hope to so many. And we love you. God bless you. The mental health bill is House Bill 1493.
What, say that again?
The House bill for mental health is House Bill 1493. and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Let's talk.
Okay.
This has been some great information, wonderful information. Melissa, this is not my drug dealer. Somebody calling from the airport. I was just told by Shawn that the law students can come up and have a picture with the chief judge. That would be great. Any of you? Okay, that's great. And then we're going to take a break.
What we're gonna do, lunch is here, and it's been here, guys. So we're gonna go back to the cafeteria. You only have a few minutes. Please visit all the vendors that you possibly can. So we're gonna go ahead and start with Elder Austin. Right, so please come down and get the witness slips. If you want to testify, you need witness slips. Okay, Elder Charles Austin.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Representative Ford, Representative Flowers, Judge Sawyer. My name is Charles Austin. I am an ex-offender, and I'm here honestly because of all the disparity that we face with the lifelong sentences that are imposed. My last conviction was 24 years ago. Yet less than 90 days ago, I was denied a position for a CPS contractor because of that conviction. Prior to that, I had been hired as executive director of Riverdale Park District, only to be terminated 2 weeks later because of that 23-year-old drug conviction. Low-level, nonviolent drug convictions are insidious in our communities. And the way that we've been charged and they've been written up as possession and delivery, which makes them unexpungible. I want to mention two bills. Representative Lilly mentioned one, HB 3212, regarding the healthcare workers in that waiver process. The other one is HB 494, involving the school code. These bills both allow people with criminal backgrounds to be able to work in these two settings. Not always as doctors and nurses or teachers and other administrators, but the way these codes are set up, we can't even be janitors in these facilities after business hours, in a school. We can't even be janitors in the school after the school is closed. You can't work in the cafeteria preparing meals, even if you're not going on the floors and actually serving them. That keeps us from having living wage, stabilizing employments. I have one daughter in college, one graduating next month. So the disparity of not being able to have a living wage job is devastating to not only affecting my life, but it has affected their lives. So I thank you for your time. I thank you both for sponsoring and co-sponsoring the legislation, and look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna call up next Mr. Arnold Julian.
Good afternoon. My name is Arnold Julian, and I just want to start first with a little background. I'm a 10-time convicted felon. I first started going to prison as a juvenile. And when I went to prison as a juvenile, education was mandatory. A GED was mandatory in St. Charles. When I got to the adult facilities, the only thing that was mandatory in adult facilities is that you had a 6th grade education. That's it. When I was released in 2014, I first met Antoine Day here, and I had basically felt like giving up because I felt like I was up against so much. You know, he talked to me. I went to the Howard Area Community Center every day. tried to talk to him as much as possible. Then I ended up meeting Chris Patterson, who's an organizer at One North Side. Chris Patterson put me on the campaign with the Violence Prevention Coalition, working on House Bill 5701, which banned the felony question from job applications. And that was the turning point, the real turning point in my life, because organizing taught me that I did have a voice when I always thought I didn't have a voice. Now that House Bill 5701 is passed, the next campaign is to get mandatory education in the Department of Corrections, because I'm a product of that education. Benny Lee used to come to Southwestern Correctional Facility. I stayed at Southwestern Correctional Facility for almost 3 years and used to talk. And I used to tell myself that that's what I want to do, exactly what he was doing, to reach out to my peers and let them know that, you know, change is possible. So I went and got an associate's degree, a CAPS certification, which is a certified associate addiction professional, and abundance of other certificates. You know, education was just my thing. And when I came home and I started working on House Bill 51 and it passed through legislation, I stood right next to Shawn Ford at the bill signing. I took them pictures and I sent them pictures down to the Department of Corrections, to Southwestern, just to let the guys in Southwestern know that it was possible. And I had only been out for 4 months and 28 days exactly when the bill got signed on July 19th of 2014. I can't see myself doing anything that will compromise my freedom at this point. All I want to do is organize. I don't want to do nothing else. But I believe that if education was mandatory in the Department of Correction, it'd bring about a lot of changes. Because House Bill 5701 does nobody any good if you come home and you don't have a GED, the minimum requirement to get a job. So that's why we're pushing so hard to get mandatory education in the Department of Corrections. It's one of the most important things that could happen in the Department of Corrections. We only have 2 institutions that have abundance of education. That's Southwestern Correctional Facility and Sheridan Correctional Facility. But you have to take part in behavior modification or substance use programs, so a lot of people don't want to take part in that. They say when you go to prison that they tell you when to go to sleep, when to wake up, when to use the bathroom, and all that. But they don't tell you that you got to go get an education. They don't tell you that. They could care less. They send you back out here knowing how to add, subtract, and do some basic reading, and that's it. And they expect you to survive out here. They don't expect you to break the law. But there's nothing in place that says that, hey, when you get out there, you definitely have an opportunity, and education during incarceration is what gives everybody that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to keep it moving, and what I'm going to do is call Attorney Orlando, and she could say it correctly, and I'm going to hand you these, and then if you could just call the next person and just keep passing along. Thank you.
My name is Eva-Lee Soriano. I'm a civil rights attorney and John Marshall alum, and Attorney Melissa Williams reached out to me to come out here today because I was part of a group of young women of color attorneys who recently put on a teach-in on the history of police torture in Chicago and the legacy of Burge. And Commissioner Boykin spoke a little bit about this morning, but just to give some more history, between 1972 and 1991, the Chicago Police Department had officers, including Burge and his underlings, that tortured at least 112 African-American men and youth. Some of the victims were as young as 13 years old, and at least 30 officers have been involved. Chicago Police Detective John Burge was the leader of Area 2, the Midnight Shift on the South Side, and he was primarily responsible for introducing these torture techniques, which included electric shock, suffocation, burns, many kinds of beatings, the use of cattle prods, nooses, mock executions with guns, and all kinds of torture techniques. And the goal of this was to produce confessions from these victims and convict them of crimes. Now, some of the numbers, 12 of the Chicago police torture survivors have been sentenced to were sentenced to death. Because of that, 5 Chicago police torture survivors who were sentenced to death were later exonerated. There's currently over 20 still behind bars today who were tortured by Burge or his underlings. 22 of these 112 number that I gave you earlier were electrically shocked with this electric shock box that they used at the station or with cattle prods by the police. 23 of these men were suffocated with a plastic bag by the police. 15 were threatened with a gun. And over $21 million has been used to settle these civil cases. That's not including the money that's been used for the defense of these attorneys. That's just the money to settle the civil cases against the city of Chicago. Now, currently before the Chicago City Council, there's a reparations ordinance that's there because of community groups like Project Mia, We Charge Genocide, the Chicago Torture Justice Memorials, and torture survivors like Daryl Cannon and others have been pushing for this for a long time. On April 14th at 10 a.m. at City Hall, it's going to go before the Finance Committee, and we're asking that everybody contact the members of the Finance Committee and ask them to support this bill. And what are the torture survivors asking for? They're asking for $20 million, which is about the amount that has been used to settle these civil cases, to fund this ordinance bill, to open up a center on the south side of Chicago that will provide mental health counseling for torture survivors, vocational training. They're also asking for this, the history to be taught in Chicago public schools and become part of the curriculum so that everybody knows what happened and it doesn't happen again. They're also asking, some of the other things that they're asking for is to be allowed to enroll in city colleges and receive their education and degree for free for those who were affected by the torture and their families, and to have a hearing for those who are still behind bars because the statute of limitations has long since passed and they don't have recourse right now in the criminal justice system. So they're asking for hearings for the remaining torture survivors. And if people want to learn more about it, tomorrow at Gallery 400 at 12 noon, there's going to be a screening of a documentary called The End of the Nightstick and a discussion about what to expect at the hearing on the 14th.
Can you say what date that is for, because this may be aired and then people may go tomorrow?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I apologize. The screening for the documentary is Sunday, April 12th, and the actual hearing for the reparations ordinance before the City Council is April 14th at 10 a.m. in City Hall. Thank you. That is, Gallery 400 is at 400 South Peoria, and that's at 2 p.m. Thank you. Mr. Charles Jones.
Yeah, I'm only going to be brief. As you said, my name is Charles Jones. I work with an organization called First Defense Legal Aid. And this is a group of attorneys that come together and they volunteer their time free of charge. They represent suspects in police custody for free for the first 48 hours during their arrest. And I want to tell you about the importance of this. As she was speaking about the John Berg torture survivor and the John Berg incident, if we don't make certain changes, John Berg is going to happen all over again. Like if a person taking his custody in Chicago, he has a right to a phone call, but the law says he gets a phone call within a reasonable amount of time. And the thing about it now is what is reasonable. Reasonable is too subjective, it's too broad, because I might be an officer, I might say reasonable is 8 hours. Another officer might say reasonable is 2 hours. It's too subjective and it's being abused by the Chicago Police Department. And another thing is guys being arrested not getting their phone calls. The officer might tell you you're not going to get a phone call until you are booked and processed. At this time, it is too late to call an attorney. It's too late to access your rights. And last but not least, most importantly, everyone in this room probably can recite a Miranda warnings by heart. My daughter's 4 years old. She watched TV. She can say it. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will use against you in court of law. You have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. That clause right there. If you cannot afford an attorney, you will not have an attorney. You have to charge, process, and book and appear before a judge. At this time, the interrogation is over with. The lineups are over with. All the stuff the police did to you, may not, is over with. So if you are indigent and cannot afford an attorney, no one is going to represent you. First Defense provides free legal representation for people at the police station. This is unique. This is the only city that we are doing this at across the world. Across the United States. In France, you get a free attorney as soon as you're arrested. In the United States, Chicago is the only place that you get free representation while you are pre-arrested in police custody. And it's very important because Chicago is the nation's capital for false confessions. I don't know if a lot of people know that. We are at the head of the false confessions epidemic. It was so bad where a moratorium declared on the death penalty. Chicago is now being called Chirac because of the violence, the urban violence. If you make a correlation between police corruption and the violence in the city, you got to look. We're at the forefront for violence, urban violence. We're at the forefront. We're also at the front as far as police corruption. It got to be a connection there. So at First Defense, I'm a former felon myself. I work with high-risk individuals, high-risk teens. The people I work with is more likely to be involved in shootings, more likely to be shot at. I try to bring these guys in once a week, and I try to teach them about their rights when it comes to law enforcement. Because one of the problems young people are having is that when it comes to the law, they feel they have no recourse. So they tend to take the law into their own hands. The law does not work for them. There's no such thing as Miranda. There's no such thing as police torture. When the police does something, they just get away with it. So they don't know they have rights. As young brother was speaking about education in prison system. When I was in prison, I was like a few classes short from my bachelor's degree before they pulled the programs out. But one of the things that was most rehabilitative for me was when I learned to exercise my right through the grievance process and through the court system. It made me feel human again. It gave me a sense of empowerment. It made me feel like I was somebody. So when a guard did something wrong to me, instead of me trying to do something physically or go hurt the person next to me, I could write him up. And it was really meant something to me. It made me feel human. I could write him up, get his badge number, write the date, time, file me a grievance, and I'm going to get justice. So I used the process. I learned to become civilized. And that's what we have to teach the young guys on the streets of Chicago, that when it comes to violence and all this, it's really displaced anger. You're taking out on these young kids next to you. It creates gang banging, a gang bang mentality where it's us against the world. Old people don't respect young people don't respect old people. But young guys, the young high-risk people I work with, they feel when it comes to the police and law enforcement, they can do whatever they want. And all these recent shootings and stuff like that, the police does not help fuel that rage and that energy. But when they leave out from me, they don't go say moms. They go take it out on the people in their community, because they feel they have no recourse when it comes to the law. When you hear about other stuff, about Home and Square, just happened recently. After all the stuff with John Burger, you think some reforms will come about, it'll be a change, but now you got the stuff with Home and Square. You had the stuff with Ryan Harris years ago, where two little boys was confessed to a crime, a brutal crime that they had nothing to do with. They gave detailed confession. This was post John Burger. Right now, if no change are implemented in Chicago, we're going to have the same thing over and over again. Once we got free attorneys now people have to be able to access these attorneys. We need that reasonable amount of time to be defined clearly. 2 hours, 1 hour, what is reasonable? We can't leave it to the department, the Chicago Police Department to say what is reasonable. That has to be clearly defined. People need to know the hotline. They need to be able to call the hotline. If I know the lawyer, I can't call my lawyer if I can't get to the phone after I'm already charged. You already questioned me, interrogated me, or whatever. Now I can't even call my attorney. After I'm booked and processed in, or as the Miranda want to say, you don't have a right to a lawyer till you can afford it unless you appear before a judge. So we have to implement these changes. We have to teach these young people the proper course of law when it comes to injustice, instead of taking the law in their own hands. And that's why I'm proud to be a representative of First Defense. The attorney that was up here, she also volunteered with First Defense. You heard from Mr. Schiller earlier. He worked for First Defense. It's a big movement, and we need to just force the city, if the law isn't changed, we need the city to issue a mandate or just a directive. We need to define what is a reasonable amount of time for when people are arrested to access their right to the phone call, and we need to get the information about these free attorneys to represent people. If not, we're going to have John Berg all over again. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Randy Ryder.
Good afternoon, everybody.
I want to thank everybody for the opportunity to speak. Where, oh, this? Yeah. Okay. You know,
Randy Wright.
Yeah. My name is Randy Wright. I'm from Keeping It Real Law Project. I just want to speak about that for real briefly because I have a relationship. I do a Know Your Rights presentation for young men and teaching their rights before they go to prison. That's what I try to call pre-entry rather than re-entry. We need to start talking about pre-entry instead of re-entry. And I hand out first offense legal aid cards in my presentation. I've been doing it for the last 6-7 years because of that fact, what he spoke of. The most egregious time during the criminal process is when you are being interrogated by the police, because you have trained interrogators dealing with people who have no knowledge of their rights under the law. And that's a prescription for disaster. But I came here to speak to y'all about something else. We are not going to change the police, the criminal justice system overnight. However, I have created a pathway to earn your citizenship back so that if they planted bags on you, we know how it goes. If they lied on the witness stand, whatever the case may be that led you to be convicted. See, I did 11 and a half years for a crime I didn't commit, so I know firsthand what can happen, okay? We need to be able to rehabilitate those individuals irregardless of that fact. So what I propose is a pathway to citizenship for ex-felons. And it goes a little something like this. It's a 4-step process. And I'm not asking for the ex-felons to do anything that they're not supposed to do anyway. It doesn't cost anything because it's behavior-based. Behavior is already monitored by parole and probation, so no new money has to be allocated for it. But here are the 4 steps. First, you must complete parole or successfully complete parole or probation, and as the associated board orders, anger management, drug treatment, etc. Obtain a GED or high school diploma. Must be working, actively seeking work, and now when I say actively seeking work, I'm talking about being able to be documented, whether you're in a job training program, placement program, etc., etc. Involved in a college or vocational program. Not have any negative, or I apologize, not be convicted of a felony within 1, 3, 5, or 7 years commensurate upon the offense you was convicted of. Obviously, the more serious, the more time. We already know that most people will come in and will fall in that 1 to 3 window because most people are nonviolent offenders. If you complete those 4 steps, then your record is forever sealed unless you get reconvicted, which means that when you go into a job interview, your credentials or lack thereof, your education or lack thereof will be the only determining factors which will deny you employment. It will not be your background. And see, although I applaud all of the well-meaning efforts in the form of legislation to expunge and seal, but those things are too narrow. They do not cover enough people. And then we're talking about throwing away a significant portion of the ex-felon population, those violent offenders. What they gonna do? Because what I'm trying to understand is this: how does a man? And I would like for anybody in here, if the wisdom in this room, I know that somebody can answer this question. How does a man live in a capitalistic society without a legitimate way to earn capital? I don't understand how you can do that. You expect the ex-felon population to do something that no one else can do. Live in America without money or a legitimate way to earn money. This will, even though I have not put any racial component in this, we know who is disproportionately affected by this. We have to, see, if we do this, then we have given the individuals the right to determine their own destiny. You can choose to go back out on the corner, or you can choose to follow these steps. And it removes the onus on society and you don't have to depend on whether somebody's in a good mood to give you a job that day. He's feeling charitable. Rather than, this is something you've earned. You have a right to it. Also, these laws are unconstitutional because the judiciary is the only people in the in the government under the Constitution, separation of powers, that is empowered to impose and mete out punishment. How is it that you can be given a post-incarceration sentence by the legislature, the landlord, the administrators? This is unconstitutional. And lastly, I'm going to leave you with this. There's only two populations in the United States where your rights vary from state to state. That's the LGBT community. Some states they can get married, some states they can't. Some states you go to, you can vote, some states you can't. You don't have freedom of movement under the First Amendment like other citizens, because wherever you go, you got to research the law in that state. Because your rights are going to change under that state law. We have to stop shooting right above our head and start shooting for the stars. Let's make these people define when our sentence has been completed. Does anybody know? When have you served your time? We need to put this in the form of litigation as anti-discrimination, because the only people you can legally discriminate against in the United States today is an ex-felon. You can't say, excuse my word, you can't say the N-word can't come in here no more. But you can say an ex-felon can't come in here. I want to know when I've served my sentence. Somebody got to tell me. My crime is, I've been out of prison 13 years. As you can see from the room, I have my own business. I worked on numerous campaigns, election judge, 8-year veteran of the military. Don't none of that matter. When I go into apply for a job, the only thing that matters is ex-felon behind my name. At some point, that stigma has got to be removed, and I thank y'all for your time.
So a veteran, thank you very much. And we just have two more, and we want to make sure everyone gets to testify before, so that the full committee could be on. Yes. Okay.
Excuse me.
Brandon is up, and then Antonio.
Excuse me, Francis, I would just like to say I'm State Representative Mary Flowers, and I did the Certificate of Innocence bill. And if you read that bill very thoroughly, you'll see there's a job training component to that legislation, in case you were not aware of it. But I just want to make sure that you know that when that bill passed, it's stated for those men who were given a certificate of innocence that the state shall provide job training, education, and housing for them. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Brandon Dorn. I work with Stand Up to Sit Down Street Mentoring Program. And no, I am not an ex-felon, but I have a lot of family members, aunties, cousins, and other family members who are locked up. And we all know that when someone's locked up, it's like the family gets locked up as well. You know what I'm saying? The cousins locked up as well. Like most time, black men are being locked up. That's the primary breadwinner. So that reflects on the whole family now. So now the breadwinner is gone. So like now, everything is tight now. Everybody got to pick up the slack. You know what I'm saying? What's called unnecessary stress. We have children involved, as brother was talking about earlier. We have children involved who are also locked up doing time as well. I work with the mentoring program. A lot of my children in the school have parents that are locked up. So it caused a lot of just antagonism in the school that wouldn't normally be there because they're going through pain and grief, unrecognized. We end up self-medicating, which cause more problems. You know what I'm saying? We use a lot of loud, a lot of lean, other type of drugs or whatever substances to kind of like alleviate some of that stress and some of that struggle. So I think that's an aspect we got to really deal with a lot more is the family dynamic and how the community is affected. Like in my neighborhood, you might have like a lot of the men are gone, not because they want to be gone, but because the state snatched them up based upon trying to survive or doing whatever they was doing. Not excusing it, but just being recognizing what's going on and how that affects the community. A lot of times men represent the structure and the discipline of the community. So like when the man is going, like we can talk to a young guy like, man, cool out, here, cool out. But it's like when the man is gone, it's like those things don't happen as much. So that's something I think we need to be looking at a lot more. Economics. We talk about jobs are very important, but also having career paths as well, like teaching young men and women about finding their passion and finding a career. Because a lot of cats and men that do McDonald's, like we making money on the block, we're not going to do McDonald's, maybe not go to Walmart, you know what I'm saying? Not saying we can't, but it's going to be very hard to convince a young man to move that path. But like you tell him like, man, you real good at graphic design. You know what I'm saying? Like, and exposing to that type of field, he gonna really be gung-ho about doing that. So giving the youth more exposure to career opportunities, not just job, but careers. They can really, you know what I'm saying, push them forward and they can follow their passion. Also, restorative justice in the schools is also very important. Cause I know like we have in school what they call the school to prison pipeline. In certain neighborhoods, they got the school to prison pipeline. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we have to really, you know what I'm saying, have a way of like I said, exposing our youth to other opportunities, as well as dealing with like different ways of like teaching our children when they get into conflict, how to resolve that conflict without getting suspended, without getting expelled. You know what I'm saying? Cause like it doesn't really help as much. You know what I'm saying? That's a vacation, a couple of days off to just chill and lay at the crib, watch Scandal, or you know what I'm saying, Judge Judy or something like that. So having opportunity for the youth to know how to like resolve conflict and to have that be part of the curriculum, the core curriculum, how to deal with like restorative conversations, having peace circles, things like that, which I know have worked in different schools in different countries, different states, like Minnesota, Oakland, as well as in Chicago at Finger, when the brother Darren Albert got killed. The brother Robert Spicer came into the school and doing culture and climate control and changed the whole culture of the school. And the school is always a beacon for the community. So if the school is strong, if the school is restorative, that's going to bleed into the community as well. So it has to be a real holistic approach that we use when we addressing these situations. It's not, we can't put a Band-Aid on a nuclear bomb. You know what I'm saying? We have to really come at it holistically and really deal with it from a whole perspective, from the top down or from the bottom up, both ways. So dealing with that as well. I think RJ should really be in school, restorative justice should really be in schools. Last quick point was we have a very like penal way of dealing with situations. Like for example, when we have problems in the streets, we're like, man, we need more cops. We need more cops. We need more cops. And a lot of times, cops are not necessarily trained on how to be counselors, how to be like mentors to the youth. So sometimes they cause more problems in the neighborhood. I'm out here in the neighborhood. I've seen it firsthand plenty of times, how police, you know what I'm saying, who come from a different neighborhood, different understanding, different vantage point, different perspective, come into a neighborhood, you know what I'm saying, and misview the neighborhood. And a lot of people up with, you know what I'm saying, minor offenses that someone who was from the neighborhood may deal with it in a different way and get a different result. Like I know on my block, what I do on my block, we kind of like really not shut down violence, but like really kept, you know what I'm saying, violence down to a minimum because relationship we had with the people. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's very important to have more people who are from the neighborhood, who care about the neighborhood, who understand the neighborhood, who grew up around the neighborhood to be a part of the situation. So like investing more in like preventative measures as well as like counselors, healers, you know what I'm saying, people of a different nature to really be in the neighborhood, be in the schools, be on the blocks or whatever like that, and have them be trained in certain processes that we know work. You know, so a lot of this stuff, it works. We know what works, I think, but sometimes we act like we got an amnesia when it comes to like, man, really doing those processes we know that work. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so many things we could be doing out here. So just really being more progressive and investing in what works, investing in more restorative ways of justice and things of that nature. Again, I work with Stand Up to Sit Down street mentoring program. We deal with like, man, a holistic approach to the situation we're dealing with, and we having good results. But think about the whole family, though. It can't be you know, a Band-Aid situation. It got to be like holistic approach to it. So appreciate it.
First of all, I want to thank you for doing what you do in our community, because you make such a difference, you know, when you hold these panels and people get a chance talk about the issues. Even though the room is not as full as it should be, you make the impact is real, I mean, it's powerful. Because I went to school right here at Michelle Clark, and I look back and see when we had leather shop, wood shop, you had mechanic school, you had swim, you had music. These are the things that geared us to where we wanted to go. You know, and today we don't have none of that in these schools. We don't have a school that's able to be productive in the learning process. See, because like the gentleman said, the school is a reflection of the community. You know, what you teach in the school reflects out on the street. So, and two, I'm an exoneree. I've been exonerated, and I thank her for making that bill what it was, because exonerees coming home from prison from wrongful incarceration have nothing, absolutely nothing. Given the opportunity to work in the field where I can help mentor and create a better path for a lot of guys that don't know the direction just by not even understanding. The gentleman that spoke earlier, when he came out of prison, I work with him. I do parole staffings. I work inside and outside of the prisons today, mentoring and helping men as well as young boys. I work with youth from 13 to 25, helping them straighten out their lives, because most of them are mentally ill. People don't recognize it. But in our community, we're so intensely judged by the news and the media and thinking that there's no help in our community, because you talk more of the problem than the solution in our community. So I don't want to rant and rave, you know, I don't want to take up all this time, but my name is Antoine Day, and I spent 14 and a half years wrongfully incarcerated in prison for a crime I didn't commit. And I was mistreated by the police, the state's attorney, the whole process. And they allowed me to go through this process and just fight for my freedom, where I had to really get focused on my life in order for me to change things. But in prison, I made a decision, a conscious decision, to do the right thing when I came home so it wouldn't happen to someone else. And so that's the reason I applaud all these gentlemen that was in front of me and the young lady who spoke, because it's a passion when you want to help your community help itself. And that's what we need. We don't need somebody to come in and fix us. Nobody gonna save us but us. And until we do the things and we put the monies and the funding where it really needs to go, nothing's going to change. Because the ruin of a nation begins in the home of its people. And in the home is where the lesson needs to be taught, how to save our community. So if there's anything we can do, let's get into the mentorship. Let's bring more mentorship into the schools so you don't have to bring them into the courtroom. Let's get people more involved in what happens in our community. We're more concerned with how many liquor stores are open, how many shoe and gym shoe places are open in our community, than the education that involves our kids. Because instead of them just being people who purchase these products, they can be business owners, they can be entrepreneurs, they can do things in our community that other people take full advantage of. So these are the things we need to focus in on, because given an opportunity, you can go so far in life. A lot of our kids have not that opportunity. I grew up in this community. I know what this community looked like from the inside out. I know what it's going to take to fix it. Let's support some of these community places that we have that's really doing the work. Let's evaluate them for what the success rate is, instead of just pouring money into same communities as same programs that's doing nothing in our community. Okay, so but I just want to thank y'all for being here, and I think the community and NAACP is really pushing these programs in our community to make it much better. Again, thank you guys.
Hello, my name is Brother Earl Williams. I'm gonna be real quick. I just want to follow up on something Antoine and Brandon and the other brother with the family saying. I'm an ex-felon, and you done heard enough stories today about ex-felons. I'm also an educator, and as an educator, the things that Brandon was talking about with the youth in our school, and the thing that Antoine was talking about the programs that we had, leather making, craft making, and all of that, it's a good program. But these programs are no longer in the school. Recess is no longer in the school. The Chicago public school system is truly set up to send our young brothers and sisters to prison. They cut out recess in the school, and that's where you learn how to deal with social problems in your community. That's where you learn how to deal with everything that's happening in your schools. So what we need to do is prepare programs to stop this flow of young brothers and sisters going to the penitentiary so you don't have to have reentry programs. And I just want to say that we need to focus on the young brothers and sisters in our community that's coming through these schools that's inadequately filled, that incarcerating our young brothers and sisters. Okay, have a nice day.
Thank you. Once again, I would like to thank Representative Ford and Attorney Melissa Williams and Judge Sawyer, and thank each and every last one of you. And I just need to, I'm going to be very brief. The focus here and the theme has been the children and young people. Most of you guys that was incarcerated, you were incarcerated at a young age. When I first spoke earlier, I spoke about the pipeline from the Chicago public schools to the prisons. That is a problem. The previous speaker, the reason why I've been fighting for years for recess in the schools is for the reasons that he has articulated. You took recess out the school, we don't know how to talk to each other. We don't know how to say, please, thank you, excuse me. We were taught, some of these kids were taught to walk with their hands behind their back as opposed to reaching out. Let's hold hands, boys and girls, to walk across the street. That's gone. Another thing, the food that was served to our children in the schools. You knew that if you gave them all of this fat and this sweet, that their behavior would be a problem in the school. And they also read the study. The Board of Education knew that if you gave exercise in the school, something would happen. Crime would go down and education would go up. And so what did they do? They took gym out of the schools. So I gave Representative Ford a book when he first came in, and it was a study done by Roosevelt University. And I showed Representative Ford that our community wasn't always this way. It was not my study. It was a study done by Roosevelt University. And I showed Representative Ford that in order for so many African American men and women to be incarcerated, we had to change the laws. We had to make what used to be probationable a felon. And what our young people need to understand is education is the key. And if you allow our communities, I went to Simeon Vocational High School, there was the job trades. That's how people built this country. The guys that's bricklayers, they didn't wake up one morning and say, I'm gonna be a bricklayer. They went to school. Their parents went to school. Architect, it used to be in the schools. But anything, any type of job training program has been taken out of the schools. The community colleges, you have to do more than cook. You have to have a place to cook if you want to learn how to cook. Doctors, nurses, those were professions. We have a shortage of doctors and nurses, but those professions are not being taught in the junior colleges anymore. Kennedy King used to be the top-notch junior college for nursing. Kennedy King used to be the top-notch junior colleges for automation when the new vehicles were coming out. They're old now. But the fact of the matter is, we must take control of our community and we must take control of our children. $15 an hour is a livable wage, but we need to do better. We have to get involved. We must get involved, and you have to be aware of who's representing you in your community. And Representative Ford, once again, I cannot say enough about, I'm sorry. And I cannot say enough about what Representative Ford has done to bring all of this to our attention. And funding is a problem. I am tired of being, I feel like a voodoo doll, because they're sticking us with a stick pin for the red lights. They're sticking us with a stick pin for higher taxes. They're sticking us with a stick pin by taking away our pension. You know, tickets. It's always something negative, negative, negative. So This is what I did. When the governor first was elected, on the day that he was sworn in, I had my secretary at 12:15 to take a letter, and put it on his desk. That letter stated to the governor what I wanted from him, what I expected. I want a financial transaction tax. There's some guys that's on Wall Street. They are making purchases all day, every day. This bottle of water, if you go into the store, it'll cost you 99 cents plus tax. But the guys on Wall Street could gamble on this bottle of water, make all kinds of transactions, make millions of dollars, and never pay 1 penny of tax on any of those transactions. That's going to have to come to an end. That's going to have to come to an end. Also, we need our own bank here in Illinois, so we can make the provisions to make the loans to send our kids to school, to build our own houses, to start our own businesses. Right now, it's the law in this state that you could sell, or we're going to be able to provide medical marijuana. But the Fed says you can't put that in our bank. And then they changed their mind. You can't put the marijuana money in our bank. That's FDIC approved. But then they changed their policy. I didn't say they changed the law, did I? I said they changed their policies. They said, okay, well, you could put the money in the bank, but that's a policy. So the bankers are kind of hesitant about implementing the policy, because once this administration is gone, what is the next administration going to do? So if we had our own bank like North Dakota, they could provide the loans for their businesses and their community, and they don't have to raise taxes on their constituents. When they need to borrow some money, they go to their bank and they pay their bank back. They pay them a minimum amount of interest instead of paying the high interest rates that these banks want to charge us for getting our own money. And then I have to ask this question: what does a bank produce? Absolutely nothing. And without our money, they could not even stand. And the only purpose of that bank is to make monies for its shareholders. You and I are not considered their shareholders, but they use our money. I have a problem with that. My next concern is what I told the governor, is about single-payer health care. Right now, I'm so grateful for the Affordable Care Act, because there were so many people in this state, in this country, that did not have health insurance. Well, ladies and gentlemen, by law, we all have health insurance. And on the 15th of this month, if you didn't have it, if you filed your taxes, you're going to know that you didn't have it, because you're going to pay a penalty. But the problem is, having that health insurance did not give you access to that doctor's office. It did not give you access to that hospital. It did not give you access to the prescription drugs that you need because of the high copays and the high deductibles. We need to bundle our resources together. The prescription drugs, if we bundle the purchase of the prescription drugs, we can bring down the cost. If we bundle the services with the hospital and the doctors, not the insurance industry, because I don't need to go to an insurance company to be made well. I just need to see my doctor, and I need to see the hospital. So those are the three issues, in my opinion, that is of the utmost importance, that's going to help the state of Illinois get out of this rut that we're in. And you need to call the governor's office, you need to call your elected officials and let them know that you want the financial transaction tax, you want the state bank, and you want the single-payer health care. And with that being said, Representative Ford, I cannot thank you enough, and I appreciate you, and thank each and every last one of you.
So we should thank CAN TV for coming out and sticking with us. We really appreciate public access, and you always do us justice in the community, so thank you very much. Watch CAN TV.